Hey there, storytellers and story lovers. This is Cross Harry. Prepare yourselves for today's incredible narrative. What if Poseidon claimed Harry as his son and Percy had to protect his new brother from Voldemort? A quick reminder, your likes, comments, and subscriptions are the fuel that keeps this channel running. Thank you for being awesome. Let's begin this journey together. Chapter 1, Blood of the Sea. Harry Potter shoved his Transfiguration textbook into his bag with more force than necessary. 3 weeks into his 5th year at Hogwarts, and everything was already going to hell. The Daily Prophet called him a liar, Umbridge's detentions left his hands scarred with, "I must not tell lies," and half the school looked at him like he was either dangerous or delusional. "You alright, mate?" Ron asked, eyeing him cautiously across the Gryffindor table. "Yeah. Brilliant." Harry stabbed at his breakfast sausage. "Just another fantastic day of people whispering behind my back." Hermione closed her Ancient Runes textbook. "Maybe we should study by the lake today. It might help clear your head." Harry nodded. The lake did sound good. Strangely good. Ever since summer, he'd felt drawn to water in ways he couldn't explain. The shower in the Dursleys' house had been his only sanctuary, sometimes standing under the spray for so long Vernon would pound on the door screaming about the water bill. Even stranger, the water never seemed to get cold for him, no matter how long he stayed. "Let's go now," Harry said, standing abruptly. "I've got a free period before potions." As they walked across the grounds toward the Black Lake, Harry felt the tension in his shoulders ease with each step closer to the water. The surface glittered in the September sun, ripples catching the light like thousands of tiny mirrors. "Watch it, Potter." Draco Malfoy stood nearby with Crabbe and Goyle, their shoes muddy from the shoreline. "Planning to drown yourself? It would save the Dark Lord the trouble." "Shove off, Malfoy," Ron growled. Harry's fists clenched. The past few weeks, his temper had been on a hair trigger. "Not today." "What's wrong? Scared without your pet Dumbledore around?" Malfoy stepped closer. "My father says it won't be long now. The minister's finally seeing what a fraud you both." "I said not today." Harry shouted, his voice cracking with frustration. What happened next defied explanation. The calm surface of the lake surged forward in a perfect wave, not toward shore, but sideways along the bank, directly at Malfoy. The water rose 6 feet high, curving like a giant hand, and crashed down on the Slytherin boy. Malfoy went sprawling backward, completely soaked. Crabbe and Goyle hadn't been touched by a single drop. "What the?" Ron gaped. Hermione grabbed Harry's arm. "Did you?" "I don't know," Harry whispered, staring at the lake. The water had already receded to its normal boundaries, placid as if nothing had happened. But he'd felt something, a pull in his gut, a connection to the wave as it formed. Malfoy scrambled to his feet, water streaming from his robes. "You'll pay for that, Potter." "Wait until my father." "What exactly did I do, Malfoy?" Harry challenged, his heart pounding. "Cast a wandless, silent spell. Even Dumbledore would be impressed." But Malfoy's eyes were wide with genuine fear as he backed away. "You're even more of a freak than I thought." He turned and hurried toward the castle, his goons following in confused silence. "Harry." Hermione's voice was barely audible. "Your eyes. What about them?" They changed color for a second. When the water, they looked almost green. "Like the sea." Harry rubbed his face. "That's mental. My eyes are always green." "Not like that," she insisted. "Different green. Deeper." Ron kicked at the mud. "Maybe it was just a freak wave. The giant squid moving around or something." Neither Harry nor Hermione answered. They all knew that wasn't it. "We should go to the library," Hermione finally said. "Research accidental magic manifestations." Harry shook his head. "And tell people what?" "That I made the lake attack Malfoy with my mind." "Maybe we should tell Dumbledore," suggested Ron. He's avoiding me, remember? Harry sighed. Look, it was probably just coincidence. Let's forget about it. But as they walked back toward the castle, Harry glanced over his shoulder at the lake. Something inside him knew this was just the beginning. The incident with Malfoy wasn't isolated. Over the next week, strange things kept happening around Harry, stranger even than his usual magical accidents. In the prefect's bathroom, the taps followed his gaze, turning on and off without him touching them. During a particularly brutal Quidditch practice in the rain, he realized he was completely dry while his teammates were drenched. And his nightmares about Voldemort now featured endless corridors that flooded with seawater instead of leading to locked doors. Harry tried to hide these occurrences, but his friends noticed. Maybe it's some new manifestation of your magic, Hermione suggested as they huddled in the room of requirement after a DA meeting. Stress can trigger changes, especially during adolescence. Yeah, and you've had enough stress for 10 wizards, Ron added. Harry ran a hand through his messy hair. It doesn't feel like magic, though. It feels, I don't know, different. Older somehow. Hermione's brow furrowed. What do you mean by older? Like it's always been there, just waiting. Harry struggled to explain. Not something I learned or developed. Something that's part of me. Thunder rumbled outside, and Harry flinched. Storms had been another source of anxiety lately. The weather at Hogwarts had been unusually volatile, with sudden squalls appearing out of nowhere. Each time, Harry felt a strange anticipation, as if the storms were building towards something. We should head back to the common room, Hermione said, glancing at her watch. It's nearly curfew, and I don't trust Umbridge not to change the rules again. They slipped out under the invisibility cloak, navigating the corridors by wand light. As they passed a window, lightning illuminated the grounds in stark white, and Harry froze. What's wrong? Ron whispered. Harry pressed his face to the glass. There's someone down by the lake. Through the sheeting rain, he could make out a tall figure standing at the edge of the water. Lightning flashed again, and for a second, Harry thought he saw the man holding a trident. I don't see, Hermione began. I have to go down there. Harry pulled off the cloak before his friends could stop him. Harry, wait. Hermione called after him, but he was already running. He sprinted through the castle, narrowly avoiding misses. Norris on the third floor, and burst through the entrance hall doors into the storm. The rain should have been freezing, but it felt warm against his skin, almost welcoming. Harry slowed as he approached the lake, squinting through the downpour. The figure stood with his back to the castle, facing the water. He wore what looked like ancient Greek armor over casual clothes, a bizarre combination that somehow didn't seem ridiculous. Hello. Harry called, drawing his wand. Who are you? The man turned. He had a weathered face with laugh lines around the eyes and a neatly trimmed beard with hints of gray. Those eyes, intense sea green, exactly like the color Hermione had described seeing in Harry's. Hello, Harry, the man said, his voice somehow carrying perfectly through the storm. I've been waiting a long time for this moment. Harry kept his wand raised. Who are you? I think you already know. The man smiled, and the rain parted around them, creating a perfect dry circle where they stood. The water speaks to you now, doesn't it? Responds to your emotions. That's your birthright beginning to manifest. My birthright? What are you talking about? The man planted his trident in the ground, a real, gleaming, three-pronged weapon that hummed with power, and approached Harry slowly. My name is Poseidon. God of the seas, storms, earthquakes, and horses. He stopped a few paces away. And I am your father, Harry. Harry's laugh was sharp and disbelieving. Right. And I suppose Dumbledore is secretly Zeus. But even as he joked, something deep inside him resonated with the man's words. The same feeling he got when the water moved for him. Your mother, Lily, was an extraordinary witch, Poseidon continued, unperturbed by Harry's skepticism. I met her during the first war against Voldemort, when she was researching ancient protective magic by the North Sea. James was away on a mission for the Order. Stop it, Harry snapped, his wand hand shaking. My mother would never, it wasn't like that, Poseidon said gently. Gods appear to mortals in many ways. Sometimes as an idea, a dream, a moment of inspiration. What grew between us was brief but genuine. And James knew. What? When Lily discovered she was pregnant, she told James the truth. He could have rejected you both. Poseidon's eyes grew sad. Instead, he loved you as his own son from the moment you were born. In all the ways that truly matter, James Potter was your father. Harry felt dizzy. This is insane. I can't be, a demigod. Half human, half god. Poseidon raised an eyebrow. Is it really so hard to believe, Harry? In a world of wizards and dragons and prophecies? Prove it, Harry challenged. Prove you're a god. Poseidon sighed, but his eyes twinkled. Very well. He raised his hand, and the entire lake rose with it, not just a wave, but every drop of water lifting 10 feet into the air, suspended like a massive, undulating ceiling. The giant squid, visible through the water, seemed to bow its tentacles toward Poseidon. With his other hand, the god made a circular motion, and the storm clouds parted directly above them to reveal a perfect circle of star-filled sky. Harry stared, open-mouthed. No wizard, not even Dumbledore, could command nature like this. Convinced? Poseidon asked, gently lowering the lake back into its basin. Harry couldn't speak. His mind raced through memories, his natural affinity for water, his inability to drown when Dudley held his head in the toilet as a child, how he breathed underwater during the Triwizard Tournament with surprising ease despite the gillyweed. Why now, he finally managed. Why wait 15 years? Ancient laws forbid gods from directly raising their children. We must remain distant. Genuine regret filled Poseidon's voice. And you were safer not knowing. Your divine scent, the aura that attracts monsters, was masked by your wizard heritage and your mother's protection. But something's changed, Harry guessed. Poseidon nodded grimly. Voldemort's return disrupted the balance. And his new body, created with your blood, has made him sensitive to your divine nature. He doesn't understand what he's sensing yet, but he will. I can no longer keep your heritage secret without putting you at greater risk. Harry's legs felt weak. He sank to his knees on the damp grass. I've sent help, Poseidon continued. Your brother will arrive tomorrow. Harry's head snapped up. My brother? Percy Jackson. My son from America. He's faced gods and titans and lived to tell about it. He'll teach you to use your powers, help you understand what it means to be a child of the sea. Poseidon's expression softened. And he'll protect you while you learn. I don't need protection, Harry said automatically. Poseidon actually laughed. You remind me of Percy. Stubborn to a fault. His face grew serious again. But Voldemort isn't the only threat you'll face now. Once word spreads that Poseidon has claimed a wizard son, both our worlds will take notice. Not all of that attention will be friendly. The god knelt before Harry, meeting him at eye level. I wish I could give you time to adjust, but time is the one thing we don't have. War is coming, Harry. Not just Voldemort's war, but something larger that even I cannot fully see. Thunder rumbled, different somehow, more distant yet more threatening. Poseidon glanced skyward. My brother grows impatient. Zeus has concerns about a wizard with godly powers. I must return to Olympus. He reached out, hesitated, then placed a weathered hand on Harry's shoulder. For what it's worth, I am proud of the man you're becoming. As is James, wherever his spirit now dwells. Before Harry could respond, Poseidon dissolved into sea mist, leaving only the lingering scent of ocean breeze. The rain resumed immediately, soaking Harry to the skin. He wasn't sure how long he knelt there before Ron and Hermione found him. "Harry!" Hermione crouched beside him, frantic. "What happened? Who was that man?" Harry looked up at his friends, rain streaming down his face, indistinguishable from tears. "My father," he said. "That was my father." Word spread through Hogwarts like fiend fire. By breakfast, everyone knew something major had happened, though the details varied wildly in each retelling. Some said Harry had been visited by Merlin's ghost, others claimed he'd performed impossible magic and turned the lake to blood. The truth, or at least, the version Harry reluctantly shared with Dumbledore in a tense midnight meeting, was far more disruptive. Harry sat at the Gryffindor table, hyper-aware of the stares and whispers. Dumbledore had insisted on making an announcement at breakfast, claiming secrecy would only make matters worse. Harry disagreed vehemently, but as usual, the headmaster had proceeded with his own plan. "Stop bouncing your leg," Hermione whispered. "You're making the table shake." "I'm not," Harry started, then realized she was right. He forced his leg to still, but energy continued to course through him. He hadn't slept at all, his mind too busy processing the impossible revelation. Dumbledore stood, and the great hall gradually fell silent. "Students and faculty, I must address certain rumors circulating this morning," he began, his voice grave. "Last night, Hogwarts received an unexpected visitor, one not seen in Britain for many centuries." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Harry fixed his gaze on his untouched eggs. "The ancient god Poseidon came to our shore to claim Harry Potter as his son." The hall exploded with noise. Harry hunched his shoulders, wishing he could dissolve into mist like his supposed father. Dumbledore raised his hands. "Silence." The command held magic behind it, bringing instant quiet. "This revelation may seem fantastic, even in our magical world, but I assure you it is true. In the coming days, a representative from the demigod world will join us to help Mr. Potter navigate this transition." "Demigod world," someone called out. "That's just mythology." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled, though his expression remained serious. "Many muggles would say the same about all of us, Mr. Finch-Fletchley. Our magical community has long maintained distance from the divine realm, but historically, wizards and gods have crossed paths many times." At the staff table, Umbridge's face had turned an alarming shade of purple. She rose, straightening her pink cardigan. Hem. "Headmaster, this absurd claim falls well outside ministry-approved educational content." "I must insist, you will find, Professor Umbridge," Dumbledore interrupted smoothly, "that the ministry has no jurisdiction over divine intervention. I have already informed Minister Fudge, who is, as we speak, in emergency conference with the Department of Mysteries regarding this development." Umbridge sputtered, but Dumbledore continued addressing the students. "I expect each of you to show the utmost respect to Mr. Potter during this transition. His parentage changes nothing about who he is as a person or a student at this institution." His gaze swept the hall. "Furthermore, Poseidon's representative should arrive by midday. He will be afforded every courtesy we would show any diplomatic guest." Harry glanced up and caught Malfoy staring at him from across the hall. For once, the Slytherin boy didn't look smug or hateful, just deeply unnerved. Finally, Dumbledore concluded, "I remind everyone that Mr. Potter's divine heritage makes him no less human, no less a wizard, and no less James Potter's son in all the ways that truly matter. That is all." As the headmaster sat, conversation exploded once more. Harry stood quickly. "I need air," he muttered to Ron and Hermione, who immediately rose to follow. "We're coming with you," Hermione said, in a tone that brooked no argument. They pushed through the crowd of staring students and made it to the entrance hall, where they nearly collided with Professor McGonagall. "Potter," she said, her voice softer than usual. "The headmaster suggested you might prefer to meet your visitor, privately when he arrives. You may use the antechamber off the entrance hall. Harry nodded gratefully. Thanks, Professor. As they moved toward the antechamber, McGonagall added, Potter. Harry turned back. For what it's worth, your mother and father, James, were two of the finest people I've ever known. Nothing can change that. A lump formed in Harry's throat. Thank you, Professor. Inside the small room, Harry paced restlessly while his friends watched with concern. I still can't believe it, Ron said for the dozenth time. A god. An actual god. Hermione had been unusually quiet, her brow furrowed in concentration. It does explain certain inconsistencies in ancient texts. Wizarding historians always debated why magic seemed to manifest differently in ancient Greece and Rome. Glad to know my existential crisis is academically interesting, Harry muttered. Sorry, Hermione said quickly. I just meant, I know what you meant. Harry sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know how to feel. Part of me thinks I'm dreaming, or that it's some elaborate trick. But another part. He struggled to articulate the sensation. Another part feels like something that never made sense finally does. Ron frowned. What about you-know-who? If he finds out, he will, Harry said grimly. Poseidon seemed to think he already suspects something's different about me. This could change everything about the prophecy, Hermione whispered. Before Harry could respond, a commotion erupted in the entrance hall. They heard Filch's nasally voice raised in protest, followed by a younger, unfamiliar voice responding with casual insolence. Don't care what your rules are, dude. I told you, Chiron sent me to see Harry Potter. So either point me to him or get out of my way. Insolent brat. Students must be registered and sorted. You can't simply waltz in, I'm not a student, I'm an envoy. Look, I've got the letter right here. No, don't touch that, it's celestial bronze, it'll go right through you. Harry moved toward the door, heart pounding. His brother. The word felt foreign and impossible. When he pulled open the door, he found Filch red-faced and blocking the path of a tall, athletic teenager. The newcomer wore faded jeans, an orange t-shirt reading, Camp Half-Blood, and a worn leather necklace strung with colorful beads. A ballpoint pen twirled between his fingers with the casual dexterity of long practice. What struck Harry most, though, were the boy's eyes, the exact same sea green as Poseidon's. As his own had apparently become when he used his powers. The teenager spotted Harry and grinned. Hey! You must be Harry. I'm Percy Jackson. He extended his hand, then noticed Harry's expression and added, yeah, this is super weird for me too. Harry shook his hand automatically, noting the firm grip and calluses that spoke of serious sword training. Mr. Potter. Filch sputtered. This intruder claims to be, it's fine, Mr. Filch, Harry said, finding his voice. Professor Dumbledore is expecting him. Filch looked ready to explode but stalked off, Mrs. Norris trailing behind with one last suspicious look at Percy. Friendly place, Percy commented, glancing around the entrance hall with undisguised curiosity. Though I gotta say, after the labyrinth and Tartarus, a haunted castle is pretty tame. Harry blinked. Tartarus? Like, the Greek underworld? Yeah, long story. Not a fan, wouldn't recommend. Percy noticed Ron and Hermione hovering in the doorway. Hi. You must be the friends Dad mentioned. I'm Percy. Ron Weasley. Hermione Granger. Percy nodded. Cool. So, I guess we should talk. Dad wasn't big on details, just go to Scotland, find your wizard brother, prevent apocalypse. Typical godly parenting, really. Despite everything, Harry found himself fighting a smile. Percy's casual irreverence toward their divine father was oddly comforting. Come in, he said, gesturing to the antechamber. It's more private. Once inside with the door closed, an awkward silence fell. Percy dropped his backpack on a chair and looked around. So, wizards, huh? That's new. I mean, I've met magicians before, Egyptian ones, but wizard school is definitely a first. And Greek gods are definitely a first for us, Ron replied. Percy grinned. Fair enough. He turned to Harry. This must be pretty overwhelming. Finding out you're a demigod usually comes with a monster attack and nearly dying, so you're actually ahead of the curve with the whole, formal introduction, thing. How did you find out? Harry asked. A minotaur chased me and my mom up a hill, nearly killed my best friend, and then my mom got kidnapped by Hades. Percy shrugged like this was perfectly normal. I was 12. Blimey, Ron breathed. Hermione leaned forward. And you've known you were Poseidon's son since then? Yeah. Though the claiming is usually more straightforward, glowing trident over the head, that sort of thing. Dad showing up in person? Percy whistled. That's rare. Must be serious. Harry's stomach twisted. It's because of Voldemort. The evil wizard, right? Dad mentioned him. Percy's expression darkened. We've got our own war brewing with the Titans, so I get it. Though I have to say, having an evil wizard after you specifically seems like a bad deal. There's a prophecy, Harry said before he could stop himself. About me and Voldemort. Neither can live while the other survives. Percy's eyebrows shot up. Seriously? Prophecies are the worst. I've got one hanging over my head too, something about a half-blood of the eldest gods reaching 20 against all odds. Harry stared. You're serious. Unfortunately. Percy sighed. Look, I don't know what it means that we're both somehow the subjects of world-ending prophecies, but it can't be coincidence. Something bigger is happening. That's what Poseidon said, Harry agreed. He mentioned a war coming, bigger than just Voldemort. Percy nodded grimly. The Titans are rising. Kronos, the Titan Lord of Time and Father of the Gods, is reforming to overthrow Olympus. If he succeeds. What does that have to do with Voldemort? Hermione asked. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. Percy ran a hand through his dark hair, so similar to Harry's own unruly mop. Gods and Titans exist partially outside normal reality. Their conflicts affect the world in ways mortals, even magical ones, don't always notice. Harry processed this. So you think Voldemort's return and these Titans rising might be connected? I think the timing's suspicious, Percy said. And I think you being both a wizard and a demigod puts you right at the intersection of two magical worlds that don't usually mix. That makes you either very important or very dangerous. Probably both. The casual way Percy laid out these possibilities, without fear or awe, made Harry feel marginally better. Here was someone who understood what it meant to have destiny thrust upon you. So what now? Harry asked. Poseidon said you'd teach me about demigod powers. Percy's expression brightened. Yeah. That's actually the fun part. Being a child of Poseidon comes with some pretty cool perks. Like controlling water. That's just the beginning. Water healing, water breathing, talking to horses, creating earthquakes, though I don't recommend that indoors, earthquakes. Ron interrupted, looking alarmed. Percy grinned. Poseidon's the Earthshaker. But like I said, not recommended unless you're fighting a Titan or something. Hermione's eyes gleamed with academic interest. Is there a theoretical framework for how demigod abilities interact with inherent magical cores? Harry's already a wizard, so, whoa, Percy held up his hands. You sound like Annabeth, and that's not something I say lightly. I have no idea about magical theory. I'm more of a practical learner. Who's Annabeth? Ron asked. My girlfriend. Daughter of Athena. She'd probably have, like, 12 theories about wizard-demigod power interactions already. Harry found himself curious about Percy's life, this parallel world of demigods that had existed alongside his own magical one without him knowing. "What's Camp Half-Blood?" he asked, gesturing to Percy's shirt. "It's our safe haven. Trained there since I was 12. Pride colored Percy's voice. "It's the only place most demigods can live without constantly fighting monsters. We learn combat, ancient Greek, mythology, which is actually just history for us, and how to use our powers. And there are children of all the gods there. Most of them. Some gods have more kids than others. Hermes' cabin's always overcrowded." The conversation continued, Percy explaining demigod life while the wizards shared basics about their world. The initial awkwardness gradually faded, though Harry still felt disconnected from the reality of his situation, as if he were floating slightly outside himself. Their discussion was interrupted by a sharp knock. The door opened to reveal Professor McGonagall. "Mr. Potter, Mr. Jackson," she said briskly. "The headmaster requests your presence in his office immediately. It seems the ministry has sent a delegation to assess the situation." Percy raised an eyebrow. "Assessment doesn't sound good." "It isn't," Harry muttered. "The ministry's been trying to discredit me all year." "Politics," Percy sighed. "Same in every world." As they followed McGonagall through the corridors, students stopped to stare openly. The whispers followed them like persistent shadows. "Son of a sea god, can't be true, it's just Potter seeking attention," heard he flooded the Slytherin dormitories. Percy leaned closer to Harry. "For what it's worth, the staring gets easier to ignore. Eventually." Harry doubted that but appreciated the sentiment. At the gargoyle guarding Dumbledore's office, McGonagall gave the password, "saltwater taffy," and they ascended the spiral staircase. Inside, they found a tense tableau, Dumbledore behind his desk, looking serene despite the circumstances, Umbridge vibrating with barely contained fury, and two unfamiliar wizards in ministry robes standing stiffly near the fireplace. "Ah, Harry, excellent," Dumbledore said. "And this must be Mr. Jackson. Welcome to Hogwarts." Percy gave a casual wave. "Thanks. Cool office. The floating stuff is a nice touch." One of the ministry wizards cleared his throat importantly. "Headmaster, we must insist this meeting be conducted without students present. As Mr. Potter is the subject of this meeting, I believe his presence is not merely appropriate but necessary," Dumbledore replied mildly. "And Mr. Jackson is here as an official representative of Poseidon, recognized by the ICW as a sovereign power under the Ancient Entities Diplomatic Act of 1296. Umbridge made her signature, hem noise. "This is precisely the problem, Headmaster. The ministry cannot recognize the authority of so-called gods without substantial evidence. I can summon an earthquake if that would help," Percy offered. "Small one. Just enough to rattle the teacups." "That won't be necessary, Mr. Jackson," Dumbledore said quickly, though his eyes twinkled. "Perhaps introductions are in order. Harry, Percy, these are Bartemius Welk and Cordelia Higglesworth from the Department of Mysteries." Welk, a thin wizard with a monocle, studied Percy with undisguised fascination. "Extraordinary. A genuine demigod. The department has theoretical files, of course, but no confirmed contact in over 3 centuries. And it should have remained that way," Higglesworth snapped. She was a severe-looking witch with steel-gray hair in a tight bun. "The separation of divine and wizarding affairs has been beneficial to both parties." Percy raised an eyebrow. "Funny how everyone talks about separation like it was mutual. The gods didn't stop interacting with wizards, wizards just stopped acknowledging the gods." Higglesworth's lips thinned. "A theological debate is hardly appropriate, it's not theology if they actually exist," Percy pointed out. Harry bit back a smile. Percy's irreverent approach to authority reminded him of Fred and George. Dumbledore intervened smoothly. "I believe our immediate concern is Harry's safety and education, now that his divine heritage has been revealed." "His so-called heritage," Umbridge simpered. Without proof, you want proof? Percy asked. He pulled a water bottle from his pocket, uncapped it, and with a flick of his fingers, made the water float out in a perfect sphere. He shaped it into a miniature trident, then a galloping horse, before returning it to the bottle without spilling a drop. The ministry officials stared. That could be wandless magic, Umbridge protested, though she looked shaken. Percy shrugged. Test my blood. Demigod ichor is different from mortal blood, half god, half human. I'm sure your Department of Mysteries has ways to check. Welk leaned forward eagerly. Indeed we do. A simple, that won't be necessary, Dumbledore interrupted. I believe we can take Mr. Jackson's identity as established. He turned to Harry. The more pressing question is how to proceed with your education, Harry, now that this additional aspect of your magic has emerged. Harry hadn't considered this angle. What do you mean, sir? You will need training in your demigod abilities, Dumbledore explained, while continuing your wizard education. I propose Mr. Jackson remain at Hogwarts as a special instructor for these skills. Percy looked surprised. I'm not really the teaching type. I'm more the stab first, figure it out later, type. Nevertheless, you have experience Harry lacks, Dumbledore insisted. And your presence provides a measure of protection. The ancient magic that guards Hogwarts may not recognize or repel threats from the divine world. Harry glanced at Percy, unsure how he felt about having a bodyguard, especially one barely older than himself. But Percy seemed equally uncomfortable with the arrangement. I should check with Chiron, Percy said. We're kind of in the middle of our own war preparations. Of course, Dumbledore nodded. But I believe your father would not have sent you if he didn't intend for you to stay. The timing of this revelation is significant. The ministry officials exchanged glances. The department would be most interested in observing this, training, Welk said, adjusting his monocle. Absolutely not, Harry and Percy said simultaneously. Dumbledore smiled. I believe the young men have spoken. This is not a research opportunity, Bartemius. The minister will hear about this obstruction, Umbridge threatened. I'm counting on it, Dumbledore replied pleasantly. Perhaps Cornelius might finally accept my dinner invitation. I've found difficult conversations go more smoothly over treacle tart. Higglesworth rose stiffly. We will report back to the department. But be warned, if divine powers manifest in disruptive ways at this school, the ministry will intervene. After the ministry officials departed, with Umbridge trailing behind shooting venomous glances over her shoulder, Dumbledore's expression grew serious. Harry, I must ask, how are you processing this revelation? Harry shrugged uncomfortably. Still working on it, sir. It's a lot, Percy added. Finding out you're a demigod is never easy. Dumbledore nodded thoughtfully. I knew your mother well, Harry. Lily was brilliant, compassionate, and fiercely protective of those she loved. What happened with Poseidon? I cannot pretend to fully understand divine interactions with mortals, but I do know this, she loved James completely. And they both loved you unconditionally. Harry swallowed the lump in his throat. Poseidon said James knew. That he chose to raise me anyway. James Potter was an extraordinary man, Dumbledore confirmed. When Lily confessed, he never wavered in his commitment to you both. The boy will be my son in every way that matters, he told me. Tears pricked at Harry's eyes. He blinked them back furiously. Percy shifted awkwardly. My stepdad, Paul, he's the same way. Not my biological father, but still my dad, you know. Harry nodded, grateful for Percy's understanding. Now, Dumbledore continued, practical matters. Mr. Jackson will need accommodations. I suggest the empty professor's quarters near Gryffindor Tower. Works for me, Percy said. Though I should probably iris message camp and let them know I'll be staying. At Dumbledore's confused expression, Percy explained, rainbow message. Demigod communication system. Fascinating, Dumbledore murmured. Our worlds have developed such different magical solutions to similar problems. Speaking of problems, Harry said, what about Voldemort? If he senses my connection to Poseidon. Dumbledore's expression darkened. Yes, that is most concerning. I believe Tom will be intensely interested in divine power, power that exists outside the constraints of wizarding magic. He'll want it for himself, Harry concluded grimly. Percy frowned. Gods don't give up their power easily, and mortals can't just take it. Voldemort has pursued immortality through terrible means, Dumbledore said. The temptation of godly power may drive him to even greater atrocities. The implications hung heavily in the office air. Harry suddenly felt exhausted, the weight of yet another complication in his already impossible life pressing down on him. Professor, he said finally, could Percy and I go? I think we have a lot to talk about. Dumbledore nodded. Of course, Harry. Mr. Jackson, Professor McGonagall will show you to your quarters when you're ready. As they descended the spiral staircase, Percy bumped Harry's shoulder gently. Hey. For what it's worth, I was pretty messed up when I found out about the whole demigod thing too. It gets, well, not exactly easier, but more normal. Sort of. Harry attempted a smile. Just what I need. More abnormal normal. Welcome to the family, bro. Despite everything, Harry felt a small spark of something almost like hope. Having a brother, even one he'd just met, from another country and magical tradition, meant he wasn't facing this new strangeness alone. The lake at twilight was peaceful, its surface painted with orange and purple reflections of the sunset. Harry sat at the edge, tossing pebbles into the water and watching the ripples spread. Each stone skipped farther than should have been physically possible. Nice technique, Percy said, dropping down beside him. But watch this. He flicked his wrist, and a flat stone skipped across the lake, then turned at an impossible angle, skipped in a complete circle, and returned to his hand. Show off, Harry muttered, but he was smiling. Percy grinned. One of the perks of being Poseidon's kid. Water always does what you want, eventually. Takes practice, though. After dinner in the Great Hall, where Percy had been the center of attention, fielding questions about demigods with good-natured patience, Harry had needed space to think. He'd found himself drawn to the lake again, and Percy had followed after giving him a half-hour head start. So, Percy said, I figured we could try some basic training tomorrow. Nothing fancy, just getting you comfortable with your connection to water. Harry nodded. I've been thinking about that. The water thing isn't completely new. I've always been a strong swimmer, even though no one ever taught me. And last year, during the Triwizard Tournament, I had to rescue Ron from the Mere People in the lake. Mere People, huh? They're usually pretty chill with children of Poseidon. They seemed pretty determined to stab me with tridents, actually. Percy looked surprised. Really? That's weird. Unless. His eyes widened. Oh man, I bet they could sense you were Poseidon's but didn't know you didn't know. Probably thought you were snubbing them by not acknowledging your heritage. Harry laughed despite himself. Great. Even the Mere People thought I was arrogant. They fell into comfortable silence for a while, watching the giant squid break the surface occasionally, its tentacles glistening in the fading light. Percy? Harry finally asked. Does it bother you? Finding out you have a brother you never knew about? Percy considered this. It's weird, for sure. But demigod families are always complicated. I've got a Cyclops half-brother named Tyson who works in Dad's underwater forges. A Cyclops? Seriously? Yep. Best brother ever, actually. Makes awesome peanut butter sandwiches. Percy skipped another stone. The thing about godly parents is they've been around for thousands of years. They've had a lot of kids. Most demigods have half-siblings somewhere. I never thought I'd have any siblings, Harry admitted. After James and Lily died, it was just me and the Dursleys. And they made it very clear I wasn't really family. Percy's expression darkened. Yeah, I've met that type. My first stepdad, Gabe, was complete trash. Used to smack me around when Mom wasn't looking. What happened to him? A slightly wicked smile curved Percy's lips. My mom turned him into a statue with Medusa's head. He had it coming. Harry blinked, unsure if Percy was joking. My cousin Dudley used to make Harry hunting his favorite sport. Chased me with his gang, beat me up when they caught me. Families, huh? Percy tossed another stone. The good news is, we get to choose who matters. My mom, Paul, Annabeth, Grover, Tyson, they're my real family. Looks like you've got Ron and Hermione in your corner too. Yeah. Harry thought about it. And the Weasleys. They've always treated me like one of their own. See? Family's who shows up. Percy hesitated, then added, and for what it's worth, I'll show up too. Brother code. Harry smiled, genuinely this time. Thanks. Their moment was interrupted by a disturbance in the lake. The water churned unnaturally, forming a funnel that rose 6 feet into the air. Within the spinning column, a greenish face appeared, webbed ears, yellow eyes, and sharp teeth. Son of the sea god, the merperson hissed in a voice that somehow carried through water and air. We sense your presence. And the other. The new one. Percy stood, casual but alert. Hey there. I'm Percy Jackson, son of Poseidon. This is my brother, Harry Potter. The merperson's gaze shifted to Harry, who felt suddenly self-conscious. We know of this one. He came below before, but did not claim his birthright. The merperson's expression was unreadable. Now 2 sons of the Earthshaker dwell above. The colony must know your intentions. We don't have any intentions toward your colony, Harry said quickly. I only just found out about all this. The merperson made a clicking sound that might have been skepticism. The Dark One seeks the power of the deep. He sends his servants to test our waters, offers bargains and threats. Now the sea stirs with godly presence. These cannot be unrelated. Harry and Percy exchanged alarmed glances. Voldemort's been contacting the merpeople? Harry asked. His servants come. Watch. Listen. Take. The merperson bared sharp teeth. 3 of our youngest disappeared last moon cycle. Return changed. Wrong. Then died. Percy's expression hardened. That's not us. But we'll help you find out what happened. Percy, Harry warned, we can't promise, we're children of Poseidon, Percy said firmly. The merpeople are under our father's protection. If Voldemort is messing with them, that's our business. The merperson studied them both. The colony will hold council. You will be summoned. With that, the water funnel collapsed, and the merperson vanished beneath the surface. Well, Harry said, that was cryptic. Percy nodded grimly. But important. If Voldemort's experimenting on magical sea creatures, he's definitely looking into godly power. We need to tell Dumbledore. Yeah. And I should contact camp. Annabeth might know if there's precedent for wizards tapping into divine power. Percy stood, brushing dirt from his jeans. But first, we should probably deal with them. He nodded toward the edge of the forbidden forest, where shadowy figures moved between the trees. Harry reached for his wand. Death Eaters? Don't think so. Wrong vibe. Percy uncapped his pen, which instantly transformed into a 3-foot bronze sword. But definitely not friendly. The figures emerged from the tree lean, 3 women with flaming hair, chalk-white skin, and mismatched bronze and donkey legs. They hissed as they approached, revealing fangs and blood-red eyes. Empausi, Percy muttered. Servants of Hecate. Definitely not what we need right now. Children of the Sea God, the lead creature called, her voice unnaturally sweet. Such power, such potential. Our mistress sends greetings. Harry raised his wand. What do you want? Only to deliver a message. The Impausa smiled, revealing more fangs than should fit in a human mouth. The worlds are merging. Old boundaries weaken. The wizard who cheated death seeks godly power, and some on Olympus would help him obtain it. Percy brandished his sword. Kronos is behind this, isn't he? Getting Hecate to work with Voldemort somehow. The Impausa laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Titans, gods, wizards, all pieces on a larger board. But you two, half-bloods of different worlds, you were never meant to meet. Your brotherhood disrupts the game. We're not interested in your games, Harry said, his wand steady. Tell Hecate and anyone else that we're not pieces to be played. Bold words from pawns. The Impausa's expression turned vicious. The dark wizard learns quickly. Divine magic flows into his ritual circles even now. And when he achieves his goal, all of you will bow or burn. Percy lunged forward, sword flashing. Or we could just kill the messenger. The Impausi scattered, hissing. The leader snarled at Percy, violence already? We come under diplomatic protection. Yeah, I'm not big on diplomatic immunity for monsters, Percy replied. The Impausa backed away. Remember our warning, godlings. The mortal wizard grows stronger with each divine secret he uncovers. Even now, he prepares to bind what should remain free. With that, the three creatures melted into shadows and vanished, leaving only the scent of sulfur behind. Harry lowered his wand slowly. What just happened? Percy capped his sword, returning it to pen form. Nothing good. Impausi are nasty, but they don't usually play messenger. And Hecate, she's the goddess of magic, crossroads, ghosts. If she's involved with Voldemort somehow. We really need to talk to Dumbledore, Harry said with renewed urgency. As they hurried back toward the castle, Harry felt the weight of his new reality settling more firmly onto his shoulders. One prophecy had never seemed enough, now he was caught between two worlds, two wars, with powers he didn't understand and enemies he couldn't yet identify. But glancing at Percy, his brother, striding confidently beside him with a gleaming bronze pen that turned into a monster-killing sword, Harry felt something else too. For the first time in his life, someone was on his side not because they chose to be, but because they were family. It wasn't much against the gathering darkness, but it was something. And for now, that would have to be enough. Chapter 2, Two worlds collide. The black lake rippled in the early morning light, fog still clinging to its surface like a blanket. Harry stood at the edge, barefoot despite the autumn chill, watching Percy wade into the water without hesitation. You sure about this? Harry called. It's freezing. Percy laughed. Another perk of being Poseidon's kid, water temperature doesn't bother us. Come on. Harry stepped tentatively into the lake, bracing for the cold shock, which never came. The water felt pleasantly cool against his skin, like a swimming pool on a perfect summer day. That's... Harry stared at his submerged feet. That's actually amazing. Right? Now come deeper. We need at least waist deep for the good stuff. Harry waded in until the water reached his midsection, still dry everywhere the lake didn't touch. They'd snuck out before dawn for Harry's first proper, demigod training session, as Percy called it. After yesterday's encounter with the Impausi, they'd spent hours with Dumbledore discussing the implications of Voldemort potentially accessing divine magic. The headmaster had been deeply troubled but admitted his knowledge of godly matters was limited to ancient texts of questionable accuracy. Okay, Percy said, now standing chest deep in the lake. First lesson, connecting with water. Close your eyes and feel the current. Harry felt ridiculous but complied. At first, he noticed nothing special, just water swirling gently around him. Then, gradually, something shifted in his awareness. He could sense the movement of the lake, from tiny ripples at the surface to deeper currents below. The giant squid dozed near the center, its massive tentacles occasionally twitching in sleep. Grindylows clustered among underwater weeds, their bony fingers gripping the stems. And deeper still, the merpeople's colony hummed with activity, their movements leaving distinctive patterns in the water. "Whoa," Harry breathed, opening his eyes. "I can feel everything." Percy grinned. "Cool, right? Water is basically an extension of ourselves. Now try moving it." "How?" "Think of it like." Percy considered. "Like your wand is inside you. The power flows from your gut, through your chest, down your arm." He demonstrated, pulling a stream of water up and sending it swirling around them in a perfect spiral. "Your turn." Harry focused on the sensation he'd felt when the lake attacked Malfoy, that pull in his stomach, the connection to the water. He raised his hand and concentrated. Nothing happened. "Don't overthink it," Percy advised. "Water responds to emotion as much as intention. What gets you fired up?" Harry thought about Umbridge's smug face, Voldemort's high, cold laugh, the Daily Prophet calling him a liar. Anger bubbled up, and with it, the water around him churned. "There you go," Percy encouraged. "Now direct it." Harry pushed his hand forward, imagining the anger flowing out through his fingertips. A column of water rose shakily, wobbling like jelly before collapsing back into the lake. "Not bad for a first try," Percy said. "Took me weeks to get that far." "Really?" Harry couldn't keep the surprise from his voice. "Well, no, I was actually pretty good right away," Percy admitted with a grin. "But it sounds more encouraging to say it took me forever too." Harry laughed and tried again. This time, the water rose more smoothly, holding its shape for several seconds before he lost concentration. They practiced for another hour, Percy demonstrating increasingly complex water manipulations while Harry mastered the basics. By the time the sun fully rose, Harry could consistently raise water columns, create small waves, and even form simple shapes that held for a few moments. "You're a natural," Percy said as they waded back to shore. "Must be all that wizard training. You've already got discipline with directing magic." "It feels different, though," Harry replied, fascinated by how completely dry he remained despite having been submerged for over an hour. "When I use wizard magic, it flows through my wand. This feels more internal." "That's exactly it. Demigod powers come from inside, from our divine blood. No wand, no focus point, just us connecting directly to our domains." Percy checked his watch. "We should head back." "You've got classes, right?" Harry groaned. "Double potions with Snape, then defense against the dark arts with Umbridge. Couldn't have planned a worse morning. The pink-toed lady, right? She seems like a real piece of work. You have no idea. She's been forcing me to write lines with a quill that cuts the words into my hand." Percy stopped walking. "She what?" His expression darkened. "That's torture. Why don't you report her?" "To who?" "She's here on ministry orders. Dumbledore's hands are tied." "Then let me handle it." Harry shook his head quickly. "No, it'll only make things worse. The ministry's looking for any excuse to interfere more at Hogwarts. If you threatened a professor, who said anything about threatening?" Percy's innocent expression didn't match the mischievous gleam in his eyes. "Children of Poseidon are good with plumbing too." Breakfast in the Great Hall was an exercise in ignoring stares and whispers. News of Harry's early morning training session had somehow already spread, complete with wild exaggerations about water dragons and 50-foot waves. "Is it true you can breathe underwater now?" Colin Creevey asked eagerly as Harry took his seat. "He could already do that with gillyweed," Ron pointed out through a mouthful of toast. Hermione, who had spread multiple ancient-looking books around her plate, looked up. "Actually, Breathing underwater as a son of Poseidon would be physiologically different from the gillyweed transformation. With gillyweed, Harry's body adapted temporarily with actual gills. As a demigod, he'd theoretically maintain human respiratory structures while magically extracting oxygen from water molecules. Percy, who had joined them at the Gryffindor table despite curious looks from the staff, stared at Hermione. "You figured all that out overnight?" Hermione blushed slightly. "I may have spent some time in the library after dinner." "Some time?" Ron snorted. "She didn't come back to the common room until after midnight." "This is fascinating magical theory." Hermione defended herself. "The intersection of divine abilities and wizarding magic hasn't been documented in centuries." "You'd definitely get along with Annabeth," Percy said, impressed. "She's just as scary smart." Harry noticed Draco Malfoy watching them from the Slytherin table, his usual sneer replaced by something more calculating. When he caught Harry's eye, he didn't look away but gave a small, almost respectful nod. "That's odd," Harry muttered, nodding toward Malfoy. Percy followed his gaze. "What's his deal?" "You mentioned he's usually a jerk." "Understatement of the century," Ron grumbled. "His father's a Death Eater, one of you-know-who's followers. So Junior over there is probably reporting everything back to Daddy," Percy concluded. "And threw him to Voldemort's." Ron choked on his pumpkin juice while Hermione's eyes widened. "Voldemort's?" Harry repeated, fighting a grin. Percy shrugged. "What? Evil guys hate when you don't use their scary names. Drives them nuts." "Fair point," Harry agreed, suddenly feeling lighter. He'd spent years afraid to say, Voldemort, hearing Percy's ridiculous nickname cut the Dark Lord down to size somehow. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the male owls. Hundreds of birds swooped into the great hall, delivering packages and letters. Harry, who rarely received mail, was surprised when a large screech owl landed in front of him, carrying a copy of the Daily Prophet. "I don't subscribe," he said, confused. Hermione frowned. "I think you'd better look at it, Harry." He unfolded the paper and felt his stomach drop. The boy who lived, wizard or demigod? Ministry questions Potter's human status following divine revelation. Beneath the inflammatory headline was a photo of Harry and Percy by the lake, clearly taken that morning during their training session. The magical picture showed Harry raising a wobbly column of water while Percy watched. "How did they?" Harry began, scanning the article with growing horror. The piece questioned whether Harry's hybrid status made him dangerous, cited ministry experts worried about the implications of divine intervention in wizarding affairs, and quoted unnamed sources suggesting Harry's new powers should disqualify him from attending Hogwarts. "This is Rita Skeeter's work," Hermione said grimly, reading over Harry's shoulder. Percy frowned. "Who's Rita Skeeter?" "A reporter who twists everything," Harry explained, his appetite gone. "But how did she get this photo? She's not supposed to be on Hogwarts grounds." "Maybe she didn't take it herself," Hermione suggested, examining the image. "Look at the angle, it's from high up, maybe from the castle." Harry scanned the Slytherin table again, where Malfoy now smirked openly. "Great," Harry muttered. "Just what I needed." Percy skimmed the article and snorted. "Hey, at least they got my name right. Perseus Jackson, American demigod trainer. Trainer makes me sound like I work with show dogs, but whatever." "You don't seem bothered by this," Harry observed. "Dude, after you've been branded a terrorist by the entire US government, a weird newspaper article is nothing." Percy shrugged. "Besides, back home, the mist usually keeps mortals from understanding what we are anyway. Being out in the open is new, but not necessarily bad." Harry wished he could share Percy's casual attitude. Years of experience told him the prophet's article was just the beginning. Sure enough, as they left the Great Hall, a group of Slytherins called out, "Hey, Potter. Do we bow or sacrifice a goat when you pass by? Does this mean you're too special to follow school rules now?" "Careful," He might smite you with his godly powers. Percy looked ready to confront them, but Harry pulled him along. Ignore them. It's what I always do. How often does this kind of thing happen to you? Percy asked quietly. Harry laughed without humor. Let's see. First year, everyone either stared at my scar or thought I was showing off. Second year, half the school thought I was attacking students. Third year, they pitted me because Sirius Black was supposedly after me. Fourth year, I was either a cheating glory hound or the tragic hero, depending on the week. And this year, I've been the delusional liar who claims Voldemort is back. Percy whistled. And now demigod. You collect labels like I collect monster dust. Story of my life, Harry agreed as they reached the dungeon staircase. I'd better get to potions. What will you do? Dumbledore suggested I explore the castle, get to know the layout. Percy grinned. I think I'll start with the girls' bathroom on the second floor. Harry raised an eyebrow. Umbridge's bathroom flooding should start right about when your class with her begins, Percy explained innocently. Purely coincidental, of course. Some issue with the ancient plumbing, I'm sure. You didn't. Didn't what? I'm just a concerned visitor investigating Hogwarts infrastructure. Percy winked. See you at lunch. Snape was in a particularly foul mood, which Harry attributed to the morning's newspaper. The potions master kept shooting Harry calculating glances, as if expecting him to suddenly grow gills or command the cauldron water to do tricks. Today you will attempt to brew the draught of peace, Snape announced, flicking his wand toward the blackboard where instructions appeared. Be warned that this potion is particularly sensitive to errors. The slightest deviation from the procedure will render it useless or, worse, dangerous. As Harry gathered ingredients, he couldn't help noticing that even his fellow Gryffindors kept their distance. Seamus Finnegan, who'd been openly skeptical of Harry's claims about Voldemort's return, now watched him with undisguised fear. Only Ron and Hermione worked normally alongside him. Ignore them, Hermione whispered, carefully measuring powdered moonstone. They'll get used to it eventually. Harry focused on his potion, finding the precise work oddly calming after the morning's chaos. He was just adding the final ingredient when he felt it, a sudden, sharp pain in his scar coinciding with a strange pulling sensation in his gut. He gasped, dropping the syrup of hellebore. The vial shattered on the floor, and simultaneously, every cauldron in the room rippled violently. Several students yelped as their potions sloshed over the edges. Potter! Snape snapped, stalking over. What do you think you're? He stopped abruptly, eyes narrowing as he looked at Harry's face. Harry pressed his palm against his burning scar. Sorry, Professor. Accident. Your eyes, Snape said quietly, so only Harry could hear. They changed color again. Before Harry could respond, the dungeon door burst open, and Percy rushed in. Harry! We've got a situation. He noticed the entire class staring and faltered. Sorry to interrupt, Professor Creepy, but I need to borrow Harry. Headmaster's orders. Snape's nostrils flared at the nickname. I do not recall giving you permission to enter my classroom, Mr. Jackson. Yeah, well, I don't recall asking for it either. Percy gestured urgently to Harry. Seriously, we need to go. Now. Harry quickly packed his bag, ignoring Snape's thunderous expression. What's happened? Not here, Percy muttered. Come on. Once they were safely in the corridor, Percy explained, I was exploring the castle when I felt this weird pull. Like something was tugging at my connection to the sea. Then your friend Luna found me, Luna. Luna Lovegood? Yeah, blonde girl, kind of dreamy voice. She said she saw me rushing around and figured I was looking for you because of the water disturbance. Said something about Raxburt's making it visible to her. Harry almost smiled despite his concern. That sounded exactly like Luna. Anyway, Percy continued as they hurried upstairs, I checked outside, and the lake's acting weird. Not natural weird. Magical weird. They burst through the entrance hall doors onto the grounds. Harry immediately saw what Percy meant. The black lake surface churned violently, waves crashing against the shore with unnatural force. The water had turned a sickly greenish-black, and in places, it seemed to glow. What's causing it? Harry asked, his scar still pulsing painfully. Not what? Who? Percy pointed toward the forbidden forest, where a hooded figure stood at the tree lean, arms raised toward the lake. Harry squinted. Death Eater? Don't think so. The vibe is different, more like the Empowsai from yesterday. Divine adjacent, if that makes sense. As they watched, the figure began to chant, voice carrying unnaturally across the grounds. The language wasn't English or any modern tongue Harry recognized, but somehow he understood fragments: water, bind, servant, master. They're trying to capture something from the lake, Percy realized. A naiad or minor water spirit. For Voldemort, Harry added, certain somehow. The pain in his scar connected to the disturbance in the water. Voldemort was watching this, feeling it. Percy uncapped Riptide. We need to stop them. Water spirits aren't very powerful individually, but they're directly connected to the divine domain. If Voldemort gets one to experiment on, he didn't need to finish. Harry drew his wand, and they sprinted toward the forest edge. The hooded figure spotted them approaching and worked faster, the chanting becoming more urgent. The lake's surface bulged upward, a column of water stretching toward the figure like a reluctant hand. Stop! Harry shouted, raising his wand. Stupefy! The red jet of light streaked toward the figure but was deflected by an invisible barrier. Protection spell, Harry muttered. We need to get closer. Percy nodded. Cover me. He sprinted ahead while Harry fired a volley of spells, impediment jinxes, disarming charms, even a leglocker curse, forcing the figure to maintain their defensive barrier. Meanwhile, Percy circled to approach from behind. The hooded figure, focused on Harry's magical assault, didn't notice Percy until it was too late. The demigod tackled them from behind, Riptide pressed against their throat. The chanting stopped abruptly, and the lake settled, though its color remained unnaturally dark. Who are you? Percy demanded, pulling back the hood. A woman's face was revealed, beautiful but inhuman, with skin too pale and eyes too large and dark. She smiled, showing pointed teeth. The son of Poseidon and the boy who lived, she said in a melodic voice. What an honor. Answer the question, Harry commanded, keeping his wand trained on her. I am Lamia, servant of Hecate, messenger of Kronos. Her smile widened. And you are too late. Percy pressed Riptide closer to her throat. What did you take from the lake? A minor nymph. Nothing you would miss, until the dark wizard learns her secrets. Lamia's eyes gleamed. He is quite the student, your Voldemort. So eager to understand divine power, so willing to experiment. Harry felt sick. Where did you send it? To the dark wizard's laboratory, of course. Even now, he extracts her essence, learning how divinity flows through immortal veins. Lamia gave a theatrical sigh. Such a waste. The nymph will fade within days. But by then, he will have learned enough. Percy growled, pressing the blade hard enough to draw a droplet of golden ichor. Tell us where Voldemort is. Or what, demigod? You'll kill me. Lamia laughed. My essence would simply return to Tartarus, and Kronos would reward me for my service. Besides. Her form began to shimmer. I'm not really here. Before either could react, Lamia's body dissolved into shadow, leaving Percy holding nothing but empty robes. Her laughter lingered in the air. I hate it when they do that, Percy muttered, dropping the robes in disgust. Harry stared at the lake, which was slowly returning to its normal color. We need to tell Dumbledore. Yeah. Percy capped his sword. And I need to contact camp. If Kronos is working with Voldemort somehow, we're in serious trouble. As they turned back toward the castle, Harry stumbled, a fresh wave of pain shooting through his scar. With it came a vision, brief but vivid, of a small, blue-tinged figure struggling against silver bonds in a dark stone chamber, while long white fingers traced patterns in the air above it. Harry. Percy steadied him. You okay? Your eyes did that sea-green thing again. I saw it, Harry gasped. The water spirit Voldemort captured. He's studying it. Hurting it. Percy's expression hardened. Then we'd better move fast. I've seen what happens when mortals mess with divine power. It never ends well. Dumbledore's office was crowded. Besides the headmaster, Harry, and Percy, Professor McGonagall and Snape had joined the emergency meeting. Snape looked particularly displeased to be included, shooting venomous glances at Percy whenever the demigod spoke. This is most disturbing, Dumbledore said after they'd explained the lake incident. If Lord Voldemort is indeed experimenting with divine entities, he may be seeking to augment his magical abilities with godly power. Is that even possible? McGonagall asked. Divine and wizarding magic have always been considered separate domains. Historically, yes, Dumbledore agreed. But there are ancient records of wizards who attempted to harness divine forces, always with catastrophic results. Percy leaned forward. That's because mortals can't contain godly power. It's too much for a human body, even a magical one. But the Dark Lord is no ordinary wizard, Snape interjected softly. His experiments with immortality have already altered his physical form significantly. Professor Snape is correct, Dumbledore said. Voldemort's current body was created through dark magic. It may be capable of channeling energies that would destroy an ordinary wizard. Harry touched his scar unconsciously. I felt him, watching. When the lake was disturbed. Like he was seeing through the water spirit somehow. Dumbledore's expression grew troubled. Your connection to Voldemort has always been concerning, Harry. If it now intersects with your awakening divine heritage, the implications are bad, Percy finished when Dumbledore trailed off. Really bad. Indeed, Mr. Jackson. Dumbledore turned to Snape. Severus, what do you know of Voldemort's recent activities? Snape's face revealed nothing. The Dark Lord has been researching ancient magic more intently than ever. He has sent Lucius Malfoy to acquire certain rare texts from collectors who wouldn't willingly part with them. What kind of texts? Harry asked. Treatises on magical theory that predates modern wizardry. Some dating back to ancient Greece and Rome. Snape's dark eyes flicked to Percy. The period when gods supposedly walked among mortals regularly. Not supposedly, Percy corrected. They did. They still do sometimes, just more discreetly. Snape's lip curled. How convenient that we have only your word for that. Severus, Dumbledore warned quietly. Percy just shrugged. Believe what you want, Professor Creepy. But when Voldemort starts shooting lightning bolts or causing earthquakes, don't say I didn't warn you. We must prepare for that possibility, Dumbledore agreed. Harry, I believe your training with Percy should intensify. If Voldemort seeks divine power, your natural connection to it may be our best defense. I also need to contact Camp Half-Blood, Percy said. Chiron and Annabeth should know about Kronos potentially working with wizards. Of course, Dumbledore nodded. And how do demigods typically communicate over long distances? Iris message, Percy explained. Rainbow communication. I'll need direct sunlight and some mist or spray water. The astronomy tower should provide suitable conditions, McGonagall suggested. As the meeting concluded, Snape lingered behind. Harry overheard him speaking quietly to Dumbledore, Headmaster, if Potter's divine heritage enhances his connection to the Dark Lord, we must consider the possibility that it works both ways. What if the Dark Lord can access Potter's abilities through that same connection? Harry didn't hear Dumbledore's response as Percy pulled him from the office, but the question haunted him throughout the day. Arg! Harry shouted, sitting bolt upright in bed, his t-shirt soaked with sweat. His scar burned like a hot coal pressed against his forehead. Ron was at his side instantly. Harry? Another nightmare? Harry nodded, unable to speak as the dream images still flashed behind his eyes. The underwater cave, the blue nymph writhing in agony as Voldemort extracted glowing essence from her body, the diagrams forming in the air, ritual circles designed to channel divine energy. And worst of all, Voldemort's voice, high and cold, the boy's connection grows stronger. Soon we will tap into it directly. I need to find Percy, Harry managed, throwing off his covers. It's 3 a.m, Ron protested. Doesn't matter. This can't wait. Harry grabbed his invisibility cloak and map, hurrying through the silent castle toward the guest quarters where Percy was staying. He found his half-brother awake, sitting cross-legged on his bed with a strange bronze device that projected images into the air, moving scenes of a summer camp, beaches, and teenagers in orange shirts. Harry? Percy looked up, quickly switching off the device. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Well, an actual scary ghost, not the friendly floating kind you have here. Dream, Harry gasped, sinking onto a chair. Voldemort. He's making progress with the water spirit. Creating some kind of ritual to tap into divine energy. Percy's expression darkened. Tell me everything. Harry described the dream in detail, the cave location, somewhere coastal, with the sound of waves outside, the ritual diagrams, circular with Greek lettering, and Voldemort's cryptic statement about Harry's connection. This is bad, Percy said when Harry finished. Really bad. He's trying to create a conduit between mortal and divine magic. Can he do it? Theoretically. Maybe. Divine power can sometimes be channeled through mortal vessels, like us demigods, but it's always partial, filtered. What he's attempting sounds more direct. Percy ran a hand through his hair. We need Annabeth. She understands magical theory way better than me. Your girlfriend? The daughter of Athena? Percy nodded, reaching for the bronze device again. This is a modified Daedalus sphere, one of Annabeth's designs. Lets us communicate between camp and the outside world without attracting too many monsters. I was just talking to her when you came in. He activated the sphere, and an image shimmered into existence, a blonde girl with stormy gray eyes sitting in what looked like a library filled with ancient scrolls. Percy. Is that Harry with you? She asked immediately. Yeah. We've got a serious problem. Percy quickly explained Harry's dream. Annabeth's expression grew increasingly concerned. The ritual design you described sounds like an adaptation of ancient Greek summoning circles. Historically, they were used to call minor gods or nature spirits, but never to extract divine power. Is it possible? Harry asked. Unfortunately, yes. Annabeth bit her lip. Especially if this Voldemort already has experience with soul magic, which from what Percy's told me, he does. Divine essence and soul energy share certain metaphysical properties. Great, Harry muttered. So he could actually succeed. In creating a conduit, possibly, Annabeth conceded. But controlling what comes through? Doubtful. Divine power is wild by nature. It would be like trying to direct a hurricane with your hands. Percy grimaced. Been there, sort of. Not recommended. There's something else, Annabeth continued. I've been researching connections between the wizarding world and the Greek pantheon since Percy told me about you. According to ancient texts, Hecate, goddess of magic, blessed certain mortals millennia ago, creating the first wizards. Harry blinked in surprise. You mean all wizards are kind of like, descendants of Hecate? Not genetically, but magically, yes. She granted mortals access to a small, controlled portion of divine power, which evolved into what you now call wizardry. Annabeth leaned forward. If Voldemort discovers this origin and finds a way to tap back into that source directly, he could potentially access far more raw power than normal wizards, Harry concluded, feeling sick. Exactly. And if Kronos is involved, as Percy suspects, it's even worse. The Titan Lord specializes in manipulating time and destiny, combined with Voldemort's soul magic. They fell silent, contemplating the horrifying possibilities. I'm coming to Hogwarts, Annabeth said suddenly. We need to research this properly, and I need to see these wizard-divine intersections firsthand. Is that safe? Harry asked. With the war brewing in America, things are temporarily stable here, Annabeth replied. The major attack we anticipated hasn't materialized yet. Chiron agrees I should go. Divine wizard cooperation may be crucial for both our conflicts. Percy looked relieved. When can you get here? Tomorrow. Nico's offered to shadow travel me to London. From there, I can take your regular transportation to Hogwarts. She turned to Harry. I'll bring everything Camp Half-Blood has on divine mortal power transference. Meanwhile, keep training, both of you. If Voldemort's gaining divine abilities, you'll need to master yours quickly, Harry. After the call ended, Harry sat silently for a moment, processing. She's intense, he finally said. Percy smiled fondly. You have no idea. But she's also usually right. His expression sobered. I should warn you, though, if Annabeth is worried enough to come personally, things are probably even worse than we think. Harry felt exhausted the next day, the combination of nightmare visions and late-night revelations leaving him drained. Even the prospect of Saturday freedom couldn't lift his spirits. The dreams continued to haunt him, blue light, ritual circles, and Voldemort's confident assertion that he was getting closer to his goal. You look terrible, Hermione observed over breakfast. Thanks, Harry muttered, pushing his eggs around his plate. Percy, who was once again seated at the Gryffindor table despite increasingly vocal objections from Umbridge, nodded in agreement. We need to work on your stamina. Demigods need less sleep than regular humans, but we still need some. I'll sleep when Voldemort stops torturing water spirits, Harry replied. The tension was interrupted by Luna Lovegood, who drifted over from the Ravenclaw table carrying a copy of the Quibbler. Hello, Harry Potter, son of the sea god, she said dreamily. I thought you should know that the Raxburts around your head have taken on a distinctly oceanic pattern. Quite lovely, actually. Harry blinked, unsure how to respond. Thanks, Luna. She turned to Percy. You must be the other son. Your Raxburt pattern is even more pronounced, though slightly tinged with New York essence. Instead of looking confused like most people did when first encountering Luna, Percy grinned. That's the most accurate aura reading I've had since Rachel became the Oracle. You've got the sight, don't you? Luna's protuberant eyes widened slightly. Is that what it's called? Daddy just says I inherited my mother's perspective. In the demigod world, we call it clear sight, the ability to see through magical veils and perceive things as they truly are. Percy leaned forward. It's rare and valuable. Luna smiled, looking pleased. No one's ever called my perspective valuable before. It definitely is, Percy assured her. People with clear sight have saved my life more than once. Percy's right, Hermione interjected, surprising everyone. While she typically regarded Luna's unusual statements with thinly veiled skepticism, she now appeared thoughtful. I've been reading about divine mortal interactions, and seers, or those with the sight, often served as intermediaries between worlds. Ron stared. Did Hermione Granger just validate Luna Lovegood's weird creature talk? Don't be rude, Ronald, Hermione scolded. Cross-referencing magical traditions is revealing fascinating correlations. What wizards dismiss as imaginary might be perfectly real in another magical paradigm. Luna beamed. Does this mean you believe in Crumplehorn Snorkax now? Let's not get carried away, Hermione said quickly. Harry smiled despite his exhaustion. There was something immensely satisfying about watching his different worlds collide and find unexpected harmony. The moment was broken by a commotion at the entrance hall. McGonagall swept into the Great Hall, accompanied by a blonde girl in jeans and an orange camp half-blood t-shirt, carrying a Yankees cap and a well-worn laptop bag. Percy jumped to his feet. Annabeth. He rushed over, embracing her tightly before leading her to the Gryffindor table. Harry noticed many students watching with interest, partly because Annabeth was strikingly beautiful in an intimidating, intellectual way, and partly because she carried herself with unmistakable confidence. Everyone, this is Annabeth Chase, Percy announced proudly. Daughter of Athena, architect of Olympus, and the smartest person you'll ever meet. Annabeth rolled her eyes, but looked pleased. Don't mind him. He's contractually obligated to exaggerate my credentials. She extended her hand to Harry. It's good to finally meet you in person, Harry. Her grip was firm, her gray eyes intensely analytical as they studied his face. You too, Harry replied. Percy talks about you constantly. All good things, I hope. She settled beside Percy, accepting the plate of breakfast Ron pushed toward her. I've spent the entire night researching wizard-divine interactions. The historical precedents are concerning. That doesn't sound promising, Hermione said. It's not, Annabeth confirmed, pulling a leather-bound notebook from her bag. The last documented attempt by a wizard to harness divine power directly was in 387 BCE. A dark wizard named Lycus attempted to channel Hecate's magic through a captured minor deity. He succeeded briefly before the power overwhelmed him, reducing an entire island to ash. An uncomfortable silence followed this revelation. But Voldemort's different, Harry said grimly. His body was magically created. It might handle divine power differently. Annabeth nodded. That's my concern. Normal human bodies, even magical ones, have natural limits. But a magically constructed form designed specifically to channel power? The usual constraints might not apply. So what do we do? Ron asked. First, we train Harry to fully access his Poseidon abilities, Percy said. If Voldemort's trying to steal divine power, Harry's natural connection to it is our best weapon. Second, we research, Annabeth added. I need access to your library, particularly any texts on ancient magical theory, ritual magic, and divine interactions. Hermione's eyes lit up. I'd be happy to help. Hogwarts has the most extensive magical library in Britain. Perfect. Annabeth smiled. I brought my laptop too. It's been modified to work around magic and monsters, a Hephaestus cabin special. Computers don't work at Hogwarts, Hermione pointed out. Too much magical interference. This one does, Annabeth assured her. It's been enhanced with celestial bronze circuitry and runs partially on divine energy. Leo called it God-Fi instead of Wi-Fi, which is terrible but accurate. Harry found himself impressed by this casual mention of technology that could overcome magical limitations. It highlighted how differently the demigod and wizarding worlds had developed their respective powers. Third, Percy continued, we need to find Voldemort's hideout. From Harry's dream, we know it's coastal. That hardly narrows it down, Ron pointed out. Britain's an island. It's all coastal. True, but the ritual setup Harry described suggests specific requirements, Annabeth reasoned. The cave needs to be naturally connected to the sea, probably with underground water channels, yet isolated enough for secrecy. Luna, who had been listening quietly, suddenly spoke up. The Whispering Caves of Cornwall would suit such purposes. Daddy did an article about them last year. Sea spirits are said to use them for equinox gatherings. The others exchanged glances. It's worth investigating, Harry decided. But how? We can't exactly leave Hogwarts with Umbridge watching our every move. I might have a solution for that, Percy said with a mischievous smile. But first, we need to get Harry's water powers up to speed. Annabeth, you said something about accelerated training techniques? Annabeth nodded seriously. Based on how quickly Harry's adapting to his abilities, I think we can try the immersion method. What's that? Harry asked, suddenly wary. Percy and Annabeth exchanged looks. You're not going to like it, Percy warned. But it works. This is insane, Harry said for the third time, staring at the lake's dark surface. You want me to do what? Walk to the bottom of the lake and have a conversation with the giant squid, Percy repeated patiently. It's a classic demigod training exercise, complete immersion in your element while performing a specific task. The squid might eat me. Nah, cephalopods love children of Poseidon. Percy grinned. Think of it as a really weird uncle. Harry looked to Hermione and Ron for support, but Hermione was deep in conversation with Annabeth, comparing notes on something in an ancient text, while Ron just shrugged unhelpfully. Don't look at me, mate. I've accepted that my life is just going to be increasingly mental from now on. Thanks, really supportive, Harry muttered. He turned back to Percy. What exactly is this supposed to accomplish? 3 things, Percy explained. First, it forces you to trust your demigod abilities completely, no halfway measures. Second, it strengthens your connection to underwater life, which all children of Poseidon can communicate with. Third, it helps you separate your wizard and demigod powers so you can use them together more effectively. Harry sighed, removing his glasses and shoes. If I drown, I'm coming back as a ghost to haunt you specifically. Fair enough, Percy agreed. Now remember, don't try to hold your breath. Just walk in normally and breathe the water like air. Your body knows what to do, even if your brain doesn't believe it yet. Harry waded into the lake, feeling the now familiar pleasant coolness against his skin. As the water reached his chest, he hesitated, every instinct screaming against deliberately submerging his head. Trust yourself, Percy called. You're the son of the sea god. Water is your domain. Taking a deep breath, Harry ducked under the surface. For a moment, panic seized him as water filled his nose and mouth. Then, miraculously, the panic subsided. He wasn't drowning. The water felt different in his lungs, heavier than air but perfectly breathable. He opened his eyes, surprised to find his vision clear despite not wearing his glasses. Underwater, he could see perfectly, every detail crisp and somehow enhanced. Fish darted around him, glittering in the filtered sunlight. Pretty cool, right? Percy's voice sounded perfectly clear, though slightly distorted. Harry turned to find his brother standing beside him, completely at ease. This is incredible, Harry replied, shocked to hear his own voice working underwater. Wait till you try swimming. Natural propulsion through water is one of our best abilities. Percy demonstrated with a quick, powerful dolphin kick that sent him shooting forward 30 feet. Harry tried to mimic the movement, finding that his body seemed to know intuitively how to move underwater. Each kick propelled him much farther than physically possible, the water almost pushing him along. They descended deeper, the sunlight gradually fading. Yet Harry found he could still see clearly, his vision automatically adjusting to the dimmer conditions. How deep is this lake? Harry asked. Deep enough that it should have natural pressure issues, but those don't affect us, Percy explained. Another perk of being Poseidon's kids. As they approached the lake bottom, Harry spotted movement, massive tentacles swaying rhythmically in the murky distance. There's our target, Percy pointed. The giant squid. The creature was even larger than Harry had realized from surface glimpses. Its central body was the size of Hagrid's hut, with tentacles stretching nearly 50 feet. As they approached, one enormous eye swiveled toward them. Now what? Harry asked nervously. Say hello, Percy suggested. Focus on connecting with it mentally. Sea creatures recognize children of Poseidon instinctively. Harry concentrated, feeling for that now familiar pull in his gut that connected him to the water. He directed the sensation toward the squid, projecting a tentative greeting. The response wasn't words exactly, but a series of impressions: curiosity, recognition, ancient patience. The squid extended a tentacle toward Harry, moving with surprising gentleness for something so enormous. "It recognizes you," Percy said, sounding impressed. "It's offering friendship." Hesitantly, Harry reached out and touched the tentacle. Immediately, a flood of images filled his mind: centuries of watching Hogwarts from the lake, generations of students, magical creatures that had come and gone. The squid had been here since the Founder's time, a patient observer of wizarding history. "Wow," Harry breathed. "It's showing me its memories." "Sea creatures have different perspectives on time," Percy explained. "They experience it more fluidly. That's why they make great allies, they see patterns humans miss." The squid's consciousness brushed against Harry's again, this time projecting more urgent images: recent disturbances in the lake, dark figures taking water samples, the captured nymph struggling as she was pulled away. "It knows about Voldemort's servants," Harry realized. "It tried to stop them but couldn't get close enough, some kind of repelling spell kept it away." Percy frowned. "Ask if it knows where they took the nymph." Harry focused again, projecting the question. The squid's response was immediate: a clear image of a rocky coastline with distinctive cliffs, waves crashing against a narrow cave entrance visible only at low tide. "That's Tinworth Cove," Harry said, recognizing the location from a magical geography lesson. "It's on the Cornwall coast, a small wizarding community is nearby." "Which matches what Luna said about Cornwall caves," Percy noted. "I think we just got our first solid lead." As they prepared to ascend, Harry felt a final impression from the squid, a warning. The water was changing, becoming less responsive to natural forces. Something was disrupting the ancient patterns that connected sea creatures to their environment. "Voldemort's experiments," Harry translated grimly. "They're already affecting the magical ecosystem." Percy's expression hardened. "Then we need to stop him fast. Divine power isn't meant to be harnessed like this. The more he tampers, the more unpredictable the consequences." They swam back to the surface, where Ron, Hermione, and Annabeth waited anxiously. "You were down there for nearly an hour," Hermione exclaimed as they emerged completely dry. "Really?" "Felt like maybe 10 minutes, Harry said, surprised. Annabeth nodded knowingly. "Time moves differently underwater for children of Poseidon. It's part of the magic." Harry quickly explained what they'd learned from the giant squid, including the Tinworth Cove location. "So we know where Voldemort's conducting his experiments," Ron summarized. "Now what?" "We can't exactly walk out the front gates with Umbridge watching." "Actually," Percy said, "I've been thinking about that. We don't need the front gates." He gestured to the lake. "We have an underwater highway that leads straight to the ocean." "The lake connects to the sea?" Hermione asked skeptically. "All water is connected, some pathways just take longer than others," Percy explained. "I can feel a deep channel that eventually reaches the North Sea. It would take normal humans days to navigate, but for us." He nodded to Harry, "We could make it in hours." "So your plan is to swim to Cornwall?" Ron looked dubious. "For me and Harry, yes," Percy confirmed. "You three would need another way there." "I'm not staying behind," Hermione said firmly. "Neither am I," Ron agreed. "And I need to examine those ritual sites firsthand," Annabeth added. Percy sighed. "I figured you'd say that. That's why we need to talk to Nico. He's still in London after dropping Annabeth off, right?" Annabeth nodded. "He said he'd stick around for a few days in case we needed him." "Perfect. Harry and I take the underwater route to scout ahead. Nico shadow travels the rest of you to meet us there." Percy looked pleased with his plan. "We investigate the caves, disrupt whatever ritual Voldemort's preparing, and get back before Umbridge realizes we're gone. Harry wasn't convinced it would be that simple, but they had limited options. Voldemort's experiments were progressing rapidly, and conventional methods wouldn't work with Umbridge controlling the school. "When do we leave?" he asked. Percy glanced at the sky. "Tonight. After dinner. The darkness will give us better cover, and Nico's shadow travel works better at night anyway." "We need to prepare," Hermione insisted. "Research protective spells, pack supplies, and I need to contact Nico to coordinate," Annabeth added. As they headed back to the castle to prepare, Harry felt a curious mixture of dread and excitement. In just a week, his life had transformed completely, discovering his divine heritage, gaining a brother, and now planning an underwater mission to stop Voldemort from harnessing godly power. Yet somehow, it felt right. Like pieces of himself that had never quite fit were finally finding their proper places. They gathered at the lake's edge just after midnight. The quarter moon provided minimal illumination, perfect for their covert departure. Harry had his invisibility cloak tucked into a waterproof bag, along with his wand and the Marauder's map. Percy carried Riptide and a small collection of what he called demigod emergency supplies, ambrosia squares, nectar, and golden drachmas. Annabeth had spent the afternoon with Nico D'Angelo, who had arrived via shadow travel an hour earlier, a pale, dark-haired boy who looked about 14 but carried himself with the haunted gravity of someone much older. "So you're the wizard brother," Nico said when introduced to Harry, his voice neutral but his dark eyes intensely curious. "Interesting. Your soul has a weird echo to it." Thanks." Harry replied, unsure how to respond to someone commenting on his soul. "It's a Hades thing," Percy explained. "Nico sees death stuff. Best not to ask for details." Nico rolled his eyes. "I'm just saying, his life force signature is unusual, part wizard, part demigod, with something else mixed in. Something fragmented." Harry thought uneasily of his connection to Voldemort but didn't elaborate. "Are we ready?" Annabeth interrupted, checking her watch. "If we're doing this, we need to move." The plan was straightforward. Harry and Percy would navigate the underwater channel to the North Sea, then follow the coastline to Cornwall. Meanwhile, Nico would shadow travel Annabeth, Ron, and Hermione directly to Tinworth Cove, where they'd all rendezvous by dawn. "Remember," Hermione said anxiously, "we have to be back before Umbridge's morning inspection." "If she discovers we're gone, we'll be back," Harry assured her, though he wasn't entirely confident. Covert missions had a way of becoming complicated, as he knew from experience. Percy waded into the lake. "Let's go, bro. The sea awaits." "Be careful," Annabeth called after them. "And Percy, don't do anything stupidly heroic." Percy grinned. "When have I ever?" "Should I start chronologically or alphabetically?" she retorted. Harry followed Percy into the lake, the water cool and welcoming against his skin. They submerged together, and Harry felt that now familiar transformation as his lungs adapted to breathing water. "This way," Percy said, pointing toward a dark crevice at the lake's deepest point. "I can feel the current flowing through. It'll be like a natural underwater highway." The crevice was barely wide enough for them to swim through single file. Inside, Harry was surprised to find a strong current pulling them forward, almost like a subterranean river flowing beneath the lake bed. "This is perfect," Percy called back. "The current will do half the work for us." They surrendered to the flow, shooting through the underwater tunnel at tremendous speed. Harry found the experience exhilarating, like flying on his firebolt, but with the added dimension of depth. Fish and other aquatic life occasionally flashed past, some species Harry didn't recognize. "How do you know where we're going?" Harry asked after they'd been traveling for what felt like an hour. "Internal compass," Percy tapped his temple. "All children of Poseidon can navigate water instinctively. You should be developing it too. Try to sense which direction the sea lies." Harry concentrated, reaching for that connection to the water. Surprisingly, he did feel a faint pull, not quite a direction, but a sense of vastness ahead, salter and more powerful than the freshwater surrounding them. That way, he said, pointing confidently. The North Sea is, calling, almost. Percy grinned. Exactly. See? You're getting it faster than I did. Took me months to develop reliable water navigation. Maybe the wizard magic helped somehow, Harry suggested. Could be. Or maybe having an actual teacher instead of figuring it out while running from monsters makes a difference, Percy laughed. The tunnel eventually widened into a larger underground river. They continued following the current, occasionally using their powers to boost their speed. Harry was amazed at how natural it felt now to manipulate water, creating small propulsion currents behind them with just a thought. Finally, after what Percy estimated was about 3 hours, the underground river emptied into a vast, open body of water, the North Sea. Whoa, Harry breathed, taking in the underwater expanse. Unlike the lake or the underground river, the sea stretched endlessly in all directions, teeming with marine life and mysterious darkness. Beautiful, isn't it? Percy said softly. The open ocean is, well, it's home in a way nowhere else can be. Harry understood exactly what he meant. The sea called to something profound within him, a connection that went beyond mere affinity. Here, surrounded by endless water, he felt more powerful and more at peace than he ever had. We need to head south, Percy said, orienting himself. Cornwall is southwest from here. We can follow the coastline to guide us. They swam upward until they could see the distant shore, then set off southward, keeping the coastline visible to their right. Percy showed Harry how to swim with enhanced speed, using the water itself to propel them forward. It's like asking the sea to help, Percy explained. Don't force it, partner with it. Harry caught on quickly, and soon they were streaking through the water faster than any boat, fish scattering in their wake. The experience was so freeing that Harry almost forgot their urgent mission, losing himself in the joy of movement and connection to the sea. About halfway to Cornwall, they encountered an unexpected complication, a pod of hippocampi, horse-like creatures with iridescent scales and fish tails instead of hind legs. Rainbow! Percy exclaimed, recognizing the lead hippocampus. What are you doing in British waters? The creature nickered and snorted, communicating in a way Harry somehow understood despite not actually hearing words. They've come to warn us, Harry translated, surprised at his own comprehension. Something's wrong with the sea near our destination. Unnatural forces disrupting the currents. Percy's expression darkened. Voldemort's rituals are affecting a wider area than we thought. Rainbow snorted again, tossing his mane. They're offering to take us the rest of the way, Harry said. It'll be faster, and they know safe routes to avoid whatever's causing the disruption. Excellent, Percy agreed, patting Rainbow's flank. We accept with thanks, old friend. Mounting the hippocampi was intuitive, they simply slid onto the creatures' backs, holding onto their manes as they shot forward with incredible speed. Harry found himself laughing with delight as his mount performed barrel rolls and graceful arcs through the water. They're showing off for you, Percy called, grinning. They don't often meet new children of the sea god. They traveled rapidly, the coastline of Britain blurring past. As they approached Cornwall, however, Harry began to notice what the hippocampi had warned about. The water felt wrong. Currents moved in unnatural patterns, and the marine life grew scarcer. Most troubling, the water itself seemed darker, as if shadows persisted even where light should penetrate. I don't like this, Percy muttered as they slowed their approach. It feels like the water is being twisted somehow. The hippocampi grew increasingly nervous, nickering and bucking as they entered the affected area. Finally, about a mile offshore from Tinworth Cove, they refused to continue. They're afraid, Harry said, understanding their distress. Whatever's affecting the water is painful for them. It's okay, Percy assured the creatures. We can continue from here. Thank you for your help. Rainbow bumped his head against Percy's shoulder affectionately before leading the pod away, casting nervous glances back at the shadowed waters ahead. "Now what?" Harry asked. Percy pointed toward a rocky promontory visible in the distance. "That matches the squid's image of Tinworth Cove. We'll approach underwater, scout the cave system, and meet the others at the rendezvous point." They swam cautiously toward the cliffs, staying deep to avoid detection. The water grew increasingly strange, colder, despite their immunity to temperature, and somehow thicker, as if resistance had been added to its natural flow. "Can you feel that?" Harry whispered as they neared the cliff base. "It's like the water itself is fighting us." "Yeah," Percy agreed grimly. "Someone's interfering with the sea's nature. Dad won't be happy about that." The underwater cliff face was riddled with small caves and fissures. Following their instincts, they located a larger opening that seemed to lead deeper beneath the rocky headland. "This feels right," Percy said. "Or wrong, actually, but you know what I mean. The disturbance is strongest here." They swam into the underwater cave, following a gradually ascending tunnel until they broke the surface inside a large cavern. The air carried a strange metallic scent, and the walls glowed with an eerie bluish light. Harry and Percy pulled themselves onto a narrow stone shelf, remaining partially in the water for quick retreat if necessary. The cavern stretched before them, connecting to several smaller chambers visible through archways. "This is definitely it," Harry whispered, his scar prickling uncomfortably. "I recognize it from my dreams." In the central chamber, they could see a disturbing sight, a large ritual circle inscribed on the stone floor, glowing with the same unnatural blue light that illuminated the cavern. Within it, suspended in a sphere of water that didn't fall or disperse, floated a tiny, humanoid figure, the captured Naiad, her blue skin pale and her movements feeble. "We need to free her," Percy said immediately. "She's fading fast." "Wait," Harry cautioned, scanning the cavern. "It seems too easy. Where are the guards?" As if in answer, a soft voice echoed through the chamber. "How convenient. The sons of Poseidon, delivered directly to our doorstep." A figure stepped from the shadows, tall, pale, with white blonde hair and cold gray eyes. "Lucius Malfoy." "Potter," he drawled, "how predictable that you'd interfere. And this must be the American demigod we've heard so much about." More figures emerged from side chambers, 3 Death Eaters in masks, and a woman Harry didn't recognize. She was inhumanly beautiful, with golden eyes and flowing dark hair that seemed to move of its own accord. "Keto," Percy spat, clearly recognizing her. "Ocean goddess of sea monsters and dangers of the deep. What are you doing working with wizards?" The goddess smiled, revealing shark-like teeth. "Adaptation, young demigod. The Titans offer alliances your Olympians refuse to consider. Why should divine power be constrained by ancient rules when mortals grow ever stronger?" Harry tensed, ready for battle. Percy uncapped Riptide, the bronze sword gleaming in the blue light. "You're helping Voldemort steal divine power," Harry accused. "Don't you realize once he has what he wants, he'll have no use for you?" Lucius laughed softly. "Such a limited perspective, Potter. Lord Voldemort doesn't seek to steal divine power, merely to restore the original connection between godly magic and wizard magic." "What do you mean?" Harry demanded. Keto drifted forward, her form seeming to ripple like water. "Tell me, young wizard god, did you never wonder where wizards' magic originated? How some humans developed abilities beyond their natural state?" A cold feeling settled in Harry's stomach. "Hecate. The goddess of magic." "Precisely," Lucius confirmed. "Wizard magic is diluted divine power, gifted to mortals millennia ago. The Dark Lord merely seeks to strengthen that original connection. By torturing water spirits." Percy gestured angrily toward the trapped Naiad. "By understanding the fundamental nature of divine essence," Lucius corrected smoothly. "The nymph is merely a research subject." "That's sick," Harry growled, his grip tightening on his wand. "That's progress," countered Keto. And you, children of Poseidon, represent the perfect bridge between worlds. One born a wizard, one born a demigod, your unique magical signatures will complete our work. Harry and Percy exchanged alarmed glances, realizing too late they'd swum directly into a trap. Now! Lucius commanded. The Death Eaters raised their wands in unison, while Keto extended her hands toward the water behind Harry and Percy. The liquid surged upward, solidifying into chains that wrapped around their limbs. Percy fought back immediately, trying to command the water to release them. Harry felt the pull in his gut as his brother strained against Keto's control. "Foolish boy," the goddess laughed. "You may be Poseidon's son, but I am an ancient sea deity. In this chamber, attuned to my power, you cannot overrule me." Harry raised his wand. Reducto. The blast struck Keto directly, but instead of injuring her, she simply dissolved into water momentarily before reforming, unharmed. "Physical attacks cannot destroy a goddess, wizard child," she mocked. The water chains tightened, drawing Harry and Percy inexorably toward the ritual circle. Harry tried every spell he could think of, cutting charms, fire spells, shield charms, but nothing affected Keto's water constructs. Percy was still struggling to wrest control of the water, his face contorted with effort. "Harry," he gasped, "we need to combine powers. I can't fight her alone, she's too connected to the sea." "How?" Harry asked desperately. "Your wand, channel your wizard magic through it, but direct it with your Poseidon powers. Together." Understanding flashed through Harry's mind. He stopped fighting against the water chains and instead focused inward, connecting simultaneously to his wizard core and his divine heritage. He raised his wand, feeling both types of power flowing together, the structured precision of wizard magic and the wild force of the sea. "Now!" Percy shouted. Harry released both powers together, directing them not at Keto or the Death Eaters, but at the cavern ceiling. Bombarda Maxima. The spell, amplified by his connection to the sea, struck with devastating force. The cavern's ceiling cracked with a thunderous boom, sending massive chunks of rock crashing down. Simultaneously, Percy summoned what control he could muster, creating a protective dome of water over himself and Harry. Chaos erupted as Death Eaters scattered to avoid the falling debris. Keto shrieked in rage as her concentration broke, the water chains dissolving back into ordinary liquid. "The Naiad." Percy reminded Harry, pointing to the suspended water sphere which was beginning to lose cohesion. Harry sprinted toward the ritual circle, dodging falling rocks and debris. A Death Eater moved to intercept him, but Harry instinctively pulled water from the ground, forming a pressurized jet that knocked the masked figure against the wall. Percy was right behind him, engaging Lucius Malfoy who had raised his wand to curse Harry. Their weapons clashed, celestial bronze against wizard magic, creating sparks of conflicting power. Harry reached the ritual circle and smashed through the water sphere with his hand. The Naiad fell into his arms, barely conscious and alarmingly light, as if she were fading into mist. "Got her," he called to Percy. "Get to the water." Percy shouted back, still dueling Malfoy. "I'll be right behind you." Harry ran for the underwater tunnel, cradling the Naiad against his chest. Behind him, he heard Percy cry out in pain. Turning, he saw his brother staggering backward, blood flowing from a slash across his chest where Lucius's spell had struck him. "Percy! Go!" Percy insisted, recovering enough to parry another of Lucius's attacks. Harry hesitated, torn between saving the Naiad and helping his brother. The decision was made for him when Keto reappeared, her form now monstrous, more shark than woman, with razored fins and glowing eyes. "You cannot escape, godling," she snarled, her voice distorted and bubbling. Water erupted from every crevice in the cavern, no longer controlled but wild and destructive. The combination of divine power and wizard magic had destabilized the entire system. "Harry, go!" Percy yelled again, dodging Keto's attack. "Get the Naiad to safety. I'll be right behind you." Heart pounding, Harry made his choice. He dove into the underwater tunnel with the Naiad, trusting Percy to follow. As he swam through the exit, he heard a tremendous crash behind him, more of the cavern collapsing. Once outside in open water, Harry paused, waiting anxiously for Percy to emerge. Seconds stretched to a minute, then 2. Nothing. Just as panic began to set in, the tunnel entrance exploded outward in a burst of debris and bubbles. Percy shot through the opening like a torpedo, a trail of golden ichor, goddess blood, swirling behind him. Go, 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 he urged, catching up to Harry. She's right behind me. They swam with desperate speed, Harry cradling the Naiad while Percy occasionally glanced back to check for pursuit. After several minutes of frantic swimming, they finally slowed, having apparently lost their pursuers. What happened? Harry asked, breathing heavily despite being underwater. Percy grinned weakly, clutching his wounded chest. Turns out sea goddesses really hate having cave ceilings dropped on them. Who knew? You're hurt, Harry noted with concern. I'll live, Percy assured him, though his face was pale. Let's get to the rendezvous point. The others should be waiting. They swam to a small cove north of the main Tinworth beach, carefully chosen for its seclusion. As they approached shallow water, they spotted 3 familiar figures on the shore, Ron, Hermione, and Annabeth, with Nico standing slightly apart in the shadows of a nearby cliff. There they are. Hermione called, wading into the shallows to meet them. Harry emerged from the water, the Naiad still cradled in his arms. Annabeth rushed to Percy, her expression turning from relief to alarm when she saw his wound. What happened? She demanded, helping him to shore. Percy winced. Got into an argument with a wizard and a sea goddess. The usual. He needs nectar, Annabeth said urgently, reaching for her pack. Meanwhile, Hermione examined the Naiad with concern. She's barely corporeal. What did they do to her? Extracted her essence, Harry explained grimly. Studying how divine power works to try to tap into it. Ron looked confused. But why? What's who want with god powers? To restore the original connection between wizards and divine magic, Harry repeated Lucius's words. Apparently, all wizard magic originally came from Hecate. Which explains a lot, Hermione mused. The historical texts I was reading with Annabeth suggested as much, but it was considered theoretical. Nico stepped forward from the shadows, his dark eyes fixed on the Naiad. She needs to return to her source. A freshwater spring or river. Otherwise, she'll fade completely. There's a magical spring in the valley beyond those hills, Ron suggested, pointing inland. My dad mentioned it once, supposed to have healing properties. Perfect, Percy said, gulping down the nectar Annabeth had given him. Color was already returning to his face. We should hurry. They trekked inland, Harry still carrying the Naiad who seemed lighter with each passing minute. When they reached the spring, a small pool of crystal-clear water bubbling up from underground, Harry gently placed her into it. The effect was immediate. The Naiad's form solidified slightly, her blue skin regaining some of its luminescence. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing pupils like swirling whirlpools. Children of the sea god, she whispered, her voice like water trickling over stones. The ritual circle must be destroyed. It creates a bridge between worlds that should remain separate. The cavern collapsed, Harry assured her. We destroyed, no, she interrupted weakly. That was only one. There are 3 circles. 3 points of power forming a triad. Percy frowned. A ritual triad? That's ancient magic. Where are the other circles? Annabeth asked urgently. The Naiad's form rippled, growing fainter. One beneath the dark water where light never reaches. One where sea meets sky at the edge of your world. Her voice was barely audible now. The binding has begun. The waters grow restless. If completed. She faded completely into the spring, leaving only a faint blue glow that gradually dissipated. A heavy silence fell over the group. "Well, that's not ominous at all," Ron finally said. "She's returned to healing rest," Percy explained. "Spring naiads can regenerate if they reach their source waters in time." But what did she mean about 3 ritual circles? Hermione pressed. "And a binding?" "Triadic ritual magic," Annabeth said grimly. "It's one of the oldest and most powerful forms of divine working. 3 points forming a triangle, creating a bounded area of effect." Harry felt a chill. So Voldemort isn't just experimenting in that one cave. He's setting up a massive ritual triangle. Covering what area? Ron asked. Annabeth pulled out a map of Britain she'd brought in her pack. "If Tinworth is 1 point, then we need to identify the other 2 locations that match the Naiads' descriptions. Dark water where light never reaches could be an underwater trench or cave system. Where sea meets sky at the edge of your world sounds like a coastal cliff or promontory. The problem is, Britain has thousands of miles of coastline," Hermione pointed out. Percy studied the map thoughtfully. "It wouldn't be random. Ritual magic follows patterns. The 3 points probably form an equilateral triangle for balanced power flow." Using a compass, Annabeth quickly calculated possible positions. "If we assume roughly equal distances between points, and 1 point is here at Tinworth, then the other 2 would be, here and here." She marked spots on the North Scottish coast and near Dover. "Those are both known magical nexus points," Hermione said, surprised. "The Scottish location is near Wick, rumored to have deep underwater caverns with magical properties. And the Dover location is the White Cliffs," Ron added. "Dad says they're riddled with magical defensive enchantments from wars with European wizards centuries ago." "So Voldemort's creating a ritual triangle covering most of Britain," Harry summarized. "But what's the purpose? What's he trying to bind?" "The sea itself," Percy realized, his expression darkening. "He's trying to bind divine ocean power to wizard control. That's why water's been behaving strangely." "Is that even possible?" Ron asked skeptically. "Theoretically, yes," Annabeth said. "Divine domains can be temporarily bound or redirected by sufficiently powerful rituals. It's extremely dangerous and usually backfires catastrophically, but if Voldemort has got his help." "Keto," Percy spat the name. "She's working with him willingly. Probably hoping to increase her own power if the main sea deities are temporarily constrained." "We need to disrupt the other 2 ritual sites," Harry decided. "Before Voldemort can activate the full triangle." Nico, who had been silent throughout their discussion, finally spoke. "There's a problem with that plan. I can sense death magic activating. The ritual has already begun." As if confirming his words, the ground trembled beneath them. In the distance, they heard a tremendous crash, like waves smashing against cliffs with unnatural force. "We need to get back to Hogwarts," Annabeth said urgently. "If this ritual affects all of Britain, the school could be in danger." "Can you shadow travel all of us?" Percy asked Nico. The son of Hades looked doubtful. 5 people is pushing my limits, especially over that distance." "Harry and I can take the underwater route back," Percy suggested. "You take the others." Nico nodded. "Meet you at Hogwarts." Harry checked his watch and groaned. "It's already past 4 in the morning. Umbridge does bed checks at 6. We'll never make it back in time." "We'll have to risk it," Hermione said. "This is more important than school rules." "For once, I agree with Hermione about breaking rules," Ron said, looking genuinely worried. They split up, with Harry and Percy heading back to the sea while the others gathered around Nico for shadow travel. Before they separated, Annabeth pulled Percy into a fierce kiss. "Be careful," she whispered. "The water won't be safe if the ritual is activating." "When is water ever unsafe for us?" Percy tried to joke, but his expression was serious. We'll be careful. As Harry and Percy waded into the sea, they immediately felt the difference. The water seemed agitated, currents swirling chaotically where they should flow smoothly. Even more concerning, their usual connection to the sea felt dampened, as if something was interfering with their divine abilities. "This isn't good," Percy muttered as they submerged. "It's like trying to swim through molasses." Harry nodded, feeling the same resistance. Their powers still worked but required more effort, like flexing a muscle that had been strained. They set off toward Hogwarts, pushing against the unnatural currents. In the distance, they could see massive waves forming without wind to drive them, the sea responding to the ritual's influence. "We need to hurry," Harry urged. "If Voldemort gains control over the sea, he won't," Percy said firmly. "Dad won't let that happen. And neither will we." They swam northward, fighting increasingly turbulent waters. About halfway back to Hogwarts, they encountered a truly terrifying sight, a massive whirlpool forming in open water, defying all natural laws. Around its edges circled enormous sea serpents, their scales gleaming with unnatural blue light similar to the ritual circle. Keto's children, Percy identified them. Sea monsters under her control. "Can we go around?" Harry asked, eyeing the serpents warily. Percy shook his head. "They've almost certainly been ordered to watch for us. And that whirlpool." He frowned. "It feels like it's pulling divine energy, not just water. I think it might be connected to the ritual. So we have to get through it," Harry concluded grimly. "Got any useful wizard spells for giant sea monsters?" Percy asked. Harry considered. "A few, but they're designed for air, not water. They might not work the same. Only one way to find out." Percy uncapped Riptide. "I'll distract the serpents, you try to disrupt that whirlpool. It shouldn't exist naturally, there must be a focal point maintaining it." They separated, Percy swimming boldly toward the nearest serpent while Harry circled wider, looking for the whirlpool's source. The massive funnel of water seemed to center on a glowing blue object at its base, hundreds of feet below. As Percy engaged the first serpent, a 60-foot monstrosity with multiple rows of teeth, Harry dove deeper, fighting the whirlpool's pull. The object at the center gradually came into focus, an ornate trident made of some dark metal, planted upright in the seabed with blue energy swirling around it. A fake trident, Harry realized. A mock symbol of Poseidon's power. He tried to swim closer, but the whirlpool's force intensified, threatening to drag him into its vortex. Above, he could see Percy battling two serpents simultaneously, his bronze sword flashing as he narrowly dodged snapping jaws. Harry raised his wand, attempting a summoning charm on the trident. Accio Trident. The object shuddered but remained firmly planted. The whirlpool surged in response, growing more powerful. Harry tried again, this time combining his wizard magic with his demigod abilities, reaching for the sea currents around the trident. "Expulso," he shouted, channeling both magical sources. The spell struck the trident with tremendous force, creating an underwater explosion. The dark metal cracked, blue energy spilling out in jagged bolts. The whirlpool's rotation faltered momentarily. Encouraged, Harry pressed his advantage. Reducto. Bombarda. Confringo. Each spell, enhanced by his connection to the sea, struck the trident with increasing power. Finally, with a sound like breaking glass that carried eerily through the water, the trident shattered. Blue energy exploded outward, then imploded, collapsing the whirlpool. The sea monsters, suddenly disoriented, broke off their attack on Percy. Without the whirlpool's unnatural influence, natural sea currents began reasserting themselves. Percy quickly swam to Harry's side. "That was impressive." "It was a fake trident," Harry explained. "Controlling the whirlpool and probably feeding energy to the ritual triangle." "One down, but there must be others," Percy said. "If Voldemort's setting up a full ritual triad, he'll have similar focal points at each vertex." We can't possibly reach the other locations in time, Harry pointed out. They're hundreds of miles away. No, but we can warn Dumbledore, Percy replied. And, he broke off suddenly, staring at something in the distance. Harry followed his gaze and felt his heart sink. Approaching rapidly was a massive shape, a chariot pulled by hippocampi, but these weren't like the friendly creatures they'd encountered earlier. These were corrupted somehow, their eyes glowing blue, their movements jerky and unnatural. In the chariot stood Keto, now fully recovered and radiating cold fury. Beside her was a tall, thin wizard Harry didn't recognize, ashen-faced, with hollow cheeks and eyes that burned with fanatical intensity. Death Eater, Harry guessed. Probably Voldemort's expert on ritual magic. We can't fight them here, Percy decided quickly. We're still recovering from the last battle, and Keto has the advantage in open water. Run. Tactical retreat, Percy corrected with a grim smile. Let's go. They swam upward rapidly, breaking the surface into early morning light. The Scottish coast was visible in the distance. They'd made good progress despite the unnatural currents. We need to get to shore, Percy said. I can summon help once we're on land. They swam with all their strength toward the coastline. Behind them, the water bulged ominously as Keto and her companion pursued underwater. Just as they approached the shallows, a massive wave rose behind them, not natural, but shaped like a gigantic hand reaching to grab them. Percy thrust out his arm, countering with his own water control. The two forces collided, creating a chaotic splash zone around them. I can't hold her back for long. Percy shouted, his face strained with effort. She's got the ritual enhancing her power. Harry raised his wand, trying to think of a spell that would help against a sea goddess. Inspiration struck, not from his wizard training but from his recent demigod lessons. The sea doesn't like to be restrained, he called to Percy. That's what you told me. Percy's eyes widened in understanding. Rather than fighting against Keto's control directly, they both suddenly released their power, stopping all resistance. Keto's water hand surged forward, overextended by the sudden lack of opposition. As it began to close around them, Harry and Percy simultaneously channeled their power, not against Keto but against the unnatural restraint placed on the sea itself. The sea cannot be bound. Harry shouted, drawing on both his magical cores. It belongs to no one. Percy echoed the sentiment in ancient Greek, words Harry somehow understood, the sea remembers its true master. The water around them momentarily stilled, as if the entire ocean held its breath. Then, with a tremendous roar, the unnatural currents collapsed. Keto's water construct dissolved, and a massive backlash of energy rippled outward from their position. In the distance, they heard the goddess scream in fury as her chariot was caught in the backlash. The corrupted hippocampi broke free of their restraints, scattering in all directions. Harry and Percy didn't wait to see more. They staggered onto the shore, exhausted but triumphant. What just happened? Harry asked, breathing heavily. Percy grinned tiredly. We reminded the sea of its nature. Divine power isn't meant to be controlled like wizard magic. It has its own will, its own consciousness in a way. By rejecting all claims to control it, including our own, we let it break free of the partial binding. So we disrupted the ritual. Temporarily, Percy cautioned. We sabotaged one focus point and created a backlash, but the main triangle is still active. We've bought time, but Voldemort's plan is still in motion. Harry glanced at the sky, which was brightening with dawn. And we're still hours away from Hogwarts with Umbridge's inspection approaching. Percy scanned their surroundings, then pointed to a small fishing village visible down the coast. Maybe we can find help there. A fluke connection or something? Worth a try, Harry agreed. They made their way to the village, which turned out to have a small wizarding section hidden behind a weathered pub. To Harry's immense relief, the local post office had a public fluke connection. Hogwarts, headmaster's office, Harry stated clearly after tossing fluke powder into the flame. He stuck his head into the green fire, feeling the strange sensation of his head being transported while his body remained behind. Dumbledore, surprisingly, was already in his office despite the early hour. He looked up sharply when Harry's head appeared in his fireplace. "Harry! Where are you? Professor Umbridge has the castle in uproar looking for you and your friends." Quickly, Harry explained everything: the ritual triangle, the fake trident, Keto's involvement, and the temporary disruption they'd caused. "Most concerning," Dumbledore said gravely. "Mr. Jackson's assessment is correct. You've bought us time, but if Lord Voldemort is attempting to bind sea power through a triadic ritual, the consequences could be catastrophic. We need to get back to Hogwarts," Harry said. "Can you help us?" Dumbledore nodded. "I'll send Fawkes. He can transport 2 people in an emergency." "Where exactly are you?" Harry relayed their location, then withdrew from the fireplace to update Percy. "A phoenix is coming to transport us." "That's actually pretty cool," Percy admitted. "Not as cool as Pegasi, but still impressive." They waited anxiously, aware that every minute brought Umbridge's inspection closer. Finally, in a burst of flame, Fawkes appeared before them, trilling a welcoming note. "Wow," Percy breathed, genuinely impressed. "That's one majestic bird." Fawkes preened, clearly appreciating the compliment. He extended his tail feathers, which Harry and Percy grasped firmly. With another musical cry, the phoenix burst into flame again, and Harry felt the familiar sensation of phoenix transportation, like being simultaneously compressed and accelerated beyond normal physics. They reappeared in Dumbledore's office, where not only the headmaster waited but also Ron, Hermione, Annabeth, and a very pale Nico who looked like he might be sick. "Never shadow-traveling that many people again," the son of Hades muttered, accepting a mug of something steaming from Dumbledore. "Harry!" Hermione rushed to embrace him. "We've been so worried. We arrived almost an hour ago, and Professor Dumbledore said Umbridge was already searching for us." "Indeed," Dumbledore confirmed gravely. "She began her inspection early, apparently acting on an anonymous tip that students would be out of bed." "Malfoy," Harry guessed immediately. "Perhaps," Dumbledore allowed. "What matters now is getting you all back to your dormitories before you're discovered. Miss Chase and Mr. D'Angelo will remain here as my official guests." Percy embraced Annabeth quickly. "We disrupted one of the ritual focus points, but there are definitely others. We'll figure it out," she promised. "Get some rest. You look terrible." Always the sweet talker, Percy grinned tiredly. Dumbledore gestured to a concealed passage behind a bookshelf. "This will take you near Gryffindor Tower. Hurry now, Umbridge is currently searching the dungeons, but she'll make her way upstairs soon." They slipped into the passage, Fawkes illuminating the way with his gentle glow. As they hurried through the narrow corridor, Harry found himself walking alongside Percy. "Some first week as brothers, huh?" Percy commented wryly. Harry couldn't help but laugh despite their exhaustion and the looming threat. "Is it always like this for you?" "Pretty much," Percy admitted. "Though usually with less wizard magic and more angry Greek monsters trying to eat me." "Lucky you," Harry said sarcastically. Percy bumped his shoulder companionably. "Hey, we make a good team. Wizard magic and demigod powers together. That's something Voldemort didn't count on." As they emerged near Gryffindor Tower, slipping past a patrolling Filch by mere seconds, Harry realized Percy was right. In just a week, his life had completely transformed, not just with new powers and a divine heritage, but with something he'd never truly had before, a brother who understood what it meant to carry the weight of prophecy and power. Whatever Voldemort was planning with his ritual triangle, Harry wasn't facing it alone anymore. And somehow, that made all the difference. Chapter 3, Brothers in Arms, Detention, Potter. Every evening this week. Umbridge's saccharine smile didn't reach her cold eyes. And 50 points from Gryffindor for unauthorized absence from the dormitory. Harry stood in her office, fighting to keep his expression neutral despite his bone-deep exhaustion. They'd barely made it back to Gryffindor Tower before Umbridge burst in, face flushed with vindictive triumph. "Professor, I was just in the bathroom," he began. "Do not lie to me," she snapped, her girlish voice rising an octave. "I have multiple witnesses who confirm you were absent from your dormitory for most of the night. Only returning at," she consulted a pink notepad, "approximately 6:15 this morning." Harry remained silent. There was no point arguing, she'd already decided his punishment. "Nothing to say?" She smiled again. "Perhaps you'll be more forthcoming during detention. My office, 7 o'clock tonight. You may go." Harry turned to leave, but her voice stopped him at the door. "Oh, and Potter. I've submitted a formal inquiry to the Ministry regarding your unusual parentage. The Department for Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures is quite interested in your case." His hand tightened on the doorknob. "I'm not a magical creature." "No." Her eyebrows rose in mock surprise. "Half human, half deity. Sounds rather like a classification issue to me. The Ministry may need to consider whether special restrictions apply to your kind." Harry bit back a retort that would only land him in more trouble and left, slamming the door harder than necessary. Percy was waiting in the corridor, leaning casually against a suit of armor that fidgeted uncomfortably under his weight. "That bad, huh?" he asked, falling into step beside Harry. "Detention all week, 50 points lost, and she's trying to get the Ministry to classify me as a magical creature," Harry summarized bitterly. "Just another fantastic day at Hogwarts." "Wow, she really is the worst," Percy whistled. "And I've met literal monsters with better personalities." They headed toward the room of requirement, where the others were waiting. After their return that morning, they'd managed a few hours of sleep before being summoned by their respective authority figures, Harry to Umbridge, Percy to a meeting with Dumbledore and Mr. Weasley, who had arrived from the Ministry with troubling news. "What did Mr. Weasley say?" Harry asked as they climbed the stairs. Percy's expression darkened. "Nothing good. There've been massive coastal disturbances all around Britain, tidal surges, weird whirlpools, fishing boats getting pulled under by currents that shouldn't exist. The Ministry's in panic mode, trying to keep it hidden from muggles." "The ritual triangle?" "Yeah. Dumbledore thinks disrupting that one focus point bought us maybe 24 hours before Voldemort can repair it and complete the ritual." They reached the blank wall that concealed the room of requirement. Harry paced 3 times, concentrating on their need for a secure planning space. A door materialized, and they entered to find Ron, Hermione, Annabeth, and Nico already inside, surrounded by maps and ancient texts. "Harry." Hermione looked up from a massive leather-bound tome. "How bad was it with Umbridge?" "Could have been worse," Harry shrugged, not wanting to worry them. "What have you found?" Annabeth pointed to a large map of Britain spread across the central table. 3 points were marked with glowing red dots, forming a perfect equilateral triangle. "We've confirmed the ritual sites," she said. "Tinworth in Cornwall, which you've already visited. Wick in northern Scotland, which has underwater caverns matching the dark waters description. And the White Cliffs of Dover, where sea meets sky at the edge of your world. The triangle encompasses almost all of Britain," Hermione added. "If activated fully, it would essentially place every body of water in the country under Voldemort's influence." Ron looked grim. "Dad says the Aurors tried investigating the Scottish site after reports of strange activity, but they couldn't get close. Some kind of divine barrier repelled them." "Keto's work," Percy guessed. "She's warding the sites against wizard interference." Nico, who sat slightly apart from the others, finally spoke. "There's something else you should know. I've been sensing death energy patterns while you were all sleeping. Whatever this ritual does, it's drawing power from the underworld too." That caught everyone's attention. "How is that possible?" Harry asked. "Water connects to death in ancient magic," Nico explained, his dark eyes serious. Rivers of the underworld, the passage of souls, there's always been overlap. I think Voldemort is tapping into that connection, using water as a conduit to death magic. A heavy silence fell over the room. That tracks with what we know about Voldemort, Harry finally said. He's obsessed with conquering death. If he could control both water and death energy, he'd be nearly unstoppable, Hermione finished quietly. Percy slammed his fist on the table, making everyone jump. No way. We are not letting that happen. We took down one focus point already. We can take down the others. In 24 hours. Ron looked skeptical. They're hundreds of miles apart, and we can barely leave the castle with Umbridge watching our every move. We have to try, Harry said firmly. If Voldemort completes this ritual, it won't matter whether Umbridge gives us detention or the Ministry believes he's back. It'll be too late. Annabeth straightened, her gray eyes calculating. We need to split up. 2 teams, 2 targets. I'll take Dover, Percy volunteered immediately. The White Cliffs are coastal, which gives me a power advantage. I should go to the Scottish site, Harry countered. My vision showed underwater caverns, which fits my abilities. You can't go anywhere, Hermione pointed out. You have detention with Umbridge tonight. Harry's jaw set stubbornly. I'll skip it. If you miss detention, she'll have you expelled, Ron warned. Then we need a diversion, Harry decided. Something big enough to occupy Umbridge while I slip away. Percy grinned slowly. I think Fred and George might be interested in helping with that. Even with a diversion, we're still facing impossible logistics, Annabeth reminded them. Getting to both sites, neutralizing the focus points, and returning before anyone notices, all while potentially fighting Death Eaters and a sea goddess. I can shadow travel a team to Scotland, Nico offered reluctantly. But only one round trip. After that, I'll be too drained. And I can handle water travel to Dover, Percy added. What about getting back? Ron asked. Harry considered this. Dumbledore could send Fawkes again in an emergency. So we have possible transportation, Hermione summarized, but we still need to know exactly what we're facing and how to neutralize the focus points. The one in Cornwall was a fake trident, Harry recalled. A mockery of Poseidon's symbol, channeling divine energy into the ritual. Annabeth nodded thoughtfully. The other sites likely have similar objects, perversions of divine symbols related to their locations. For Dover, probably something representing the sky, Percy suggested. Since it's where sea meets sky. And for Scotland, something representing the underworld, Nico added. If it's drawing death energy from deep water. Hermione closed her massive tome decisively. We need to research symbolic countermagic. If these focus points are perversions of divine symbols, perhaps they can be neutralized by true divine emblems. Like what? Ron asked. We can't exactly borrow Poseidon's actual trident. Percy straightened suddenly. Maybe not the actual trident, but... He dug into his pocket and pulled out a simple seashell. Dad gave me this years ago. It's attuned to his power. And I have this, Harry added, retrieving a small glass vial from his robes, one he'd filled with water from the Black Lake after discovering his heritage. Water blessed by the lake's mere people when they recognized me as Poseidon's son. Annabeth's eyes lit up. Genuine divine tokens. Those could work as counters to the corrupted symbols. Okay, so we have transportation and potential countermeasures, Harry summarized. Now we need teams. After discussion, they settled on the arrangements. Harry, Hermione, and Nico would target the Scottish site, while Percy, Ron, and Annabeth would handle Dover. Each team would have a mix of wizard magic and demigod abilities. What about the diversion? Ron asked. Harry grinned. Leave that to me and the Weasley twins. I think it's time Hogwarts experienced some serious mayhem. The Weasley twins didn't disappoint. At precisely 6:45 that evening, 15 minutes before Harry's detention, the east wing of Hogwarts erupted in spectacular chaos. Portable swamps materialized in 3 corridors simultaneously, while enchanted fireworks shaped like dragons and phoenixes soared through the halls, multiplying whenever anyone tried to vanish them. From their hidden position behind a tapestry, Harry and Fred watched Umbridge sprint past, her cardigan askew and her face contorted with rage. Beautiful, Fred wiped an imaginary tear from his eye. Simply beautiful. Will it keep her busy long enough? Harry asked anxiously. Mate, those fireworks are specially enchanted to target anyone wearing pink, George replied, joining them from his lookout position. She'll be running in circles for hours. Perfect, Harry said gratefully. I owe you both. Consider it our contribution to international magical cooperation, Fred winked. Now go save Britain from you-know-whose evil water ritual thing. Harry hurried to the 7th floor where the others waited in the room of requirement, now transformed into a preparation area with equipment for both teams. Hermione had conjured waterproof bags containing emergency supplies, while Annabeth distributed celestial bronze weapons to those who could use them. Umbridge? Hermione asked as Harry entered. Currently being chased by a flock of pink-seeking Catherine wheels, Harry confirmed, quickly changing into the wetsuit Hermione had procured for their underwater mission. We should have at least 3 hours. Percy clapped his hands together. All right, teams. Synchronize watches. We hit both sites simultaneously at exactly 9 o'clock. That gives us just over an hour to get in position. Nico stepped forward, looking even paler than usual. Everyone going to Scotland, gather around. This won't feel pleasant. Harry gripped his wand tightly in one hand and Hermione's arm with the other as they formed a circle with Nico. The son of Hades closed his eyes in concentration, and the shadows in the room seemed to thicken and flow toward them. Hold on tight, Nico warned. And whatever you do, don't let go. The world dissolved into icy darkness. Harry felt like he was being compressed and stretched simultaneously, hurtling through a freezing void where no light existed. Just when he thought he couldn't bear it another second, they burst back into reality, stumbling onto wet rocks beside a churning sea. Hermione doubled over, gasping. That was horrible. You get used to it, Nico muttered, though he looked ready to collapse. Sort of. Harry helped the son of Hades to a boulder where he could sit. Are you okay? I'll recover, Nico assured him. Just give me a few minutes. They had emerged on a desolate stretch of Scottish coastline. Jagged black rocks jutted from the water, battered by waves that seemed unnaturally aggressive. The evening sky was heavy with storm clouds, and the air smelled of ozone and salt. There, Hermione pointed to a narrow opening in the cliff face, partially submerged at water level. That must be the entrance to the cavern system. Harry felt it immediately, a wrongness in the water, similar to what they'd experienced near Cornwall but stronger. The waves moved with unnatural patterns, sometimes flowing against the tide or freezing momentarily in mid-crest. The ritual is further along here, he observed grimly. The water's more corrupted. Nico nodded. Death energy is concentrated around that entrance. Whatever's inside is powerful. Harry checked his watch. We have 40 minutes until synchronized attack time. Let's scout the approach. They made their way carefully down the rocky slope to the water's edge. Harry knelt and dipped his hand into the sea, immediately recoiling. It burns, he said, surprised. The water actually burns me. The corruption is rejecting your divine connection, Nico guessed. Voldemort's ritual is specifically designed to usurp Poseidon's domain. Hermione frowned thoughtfully. Harry, try using your divine water. She pointed to the vial hanging around his neck. Maybe it can create a protective barrier. Harry uncorked the vial and poured a few drops onto his palm. The clear liquid glowed faintly blue, spreading across his skin like living mercury. When he touched the sea again, the burning sensation was gone. It works, he confirmed. But I don't have enough for all of us. You don't need to, Hermione said. Nico and I can use bubblehead charms for breathing, and you can extend your natural dryness ability to protect us from the corrupted water. Will that work? Harry asked Nico. The son of Hades shrugged. Divine abilities are adaptable. If you focus on protecting us as extensions of yourself, it might. Harry nodded, though he felt uncertain. His powers were still new, and he'd never tried extending them to others before. As they prepared their equipment, Harry noticed something disturbing. Small fish occasionally floated to the surface, belly up and covered in strange blue markings like ritual symbols. The corruption is killing marine life, he said quietly. All the more reason to stop it, Hermione replied, checking her waterproofed wand holster one last time. At 8:45, they were ready. Hermione and Nico cast bubblehead charms on themselves, while Harry focused on extending his water protection. Remember, he instructed, stay close to me. I don't know how far this protection extends. Together, they waded into the churning sea. Harry felt the corrupted water fighting his influence, but the divine drops from his veil seemed to create a small sphere of normalcy around them. They swam toward the cave entrance, Harry leading the way with his natural underwater vision guiding them. The narrow opening widened into a vast underwater cavern system, dimly illuminated by an eerie blue glow emanating from deeper within. Harry could feel the wrongness growing stronger as they swam forward, the water becoming thicker and more resistant. After navigating several twisting tunnels, they emerged into an air pocket, a massive central chamber with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. They climbed onto a stone ledge, Hermione and Nico dispelling their bubblehead charms. Look, Hermione whispered, pointing across the chamber. In the center of the cavern stood an obsidian altar, surrounded by a perfect circle of that same unnatural blue light they'd seen in Cornwall. Floating above the altar was the focus point, a black helm that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, with blue energy pulsing through cracks in its surface. A mockery of Hades' helm of darkness, Nico growled, his face tight with anger. They're perverting symbols of the underworld. Harry studied the chamber carefully. Unlike Cornwall, this site appeared unguarded, no Death Eaters, no sign of Keto. It seems too easy. Because the Guardians are invisible, Nico said grimly. Can't you feel them? Now that he mentioned it, Harry could sense movement in the shadows, whispers of something not quite alive but definitely present. What are they? Souls bound to water, Nico explained. Spirits of those who drowned, trapped between realms. The ritual is using them as guardians. How do we get past them? Hermione asked, her wand raised defensively. Nico drew his Stygian iron sword, the black metal seeming to drink in the dim light. We don't. I distract them while you two destroy the helm. That's too dangerous, Harry protested. I'm a son of Hades, Nico reminded him. Spirits answer to me, usually. He didn't sound entirely confident about the last part. They checked the time, 8:58. Almost synchronized attack time. Ready? Harry asked. Hermione and Nico nodded, tension evident in their faces. Now. Harry called as his watch ticked to 9 o'clock. Nico leapt forward, his black sword slicing through the air. Immediately, the shadows in the chamber reacted, coalescing into translucent figures with hollow eyes and gaping mouths. Dozens of drowned souls, their bodies bloated and seaweed tangled, materialized around them. Go! Nico shouted, his sword moving in complex patterns that seemed to both repel and command the spirits. I can hold them. Harry and Hermione sprinted across the chamber toward the altar. Halfway there, the corrupted water on the cavern floor rose up, forming barriers and grasping tendrils that tried to snare them. Incendio! Hermione cast, creating a wall of fire that momentarily drove back the water constructs. Harry reached for his connection to the sea, fighting against the corruption. It was like pushing through thick mud, but he managed to clear a path forward by forcing the water to obey its true nature rather than the twisted version imposed by the ritual. They reached the altar, and Harry pulled out his vial of divine water. The corrupted helm pulsed menacingly before them, radiating malevolence. "Harry, look out!" Hermione screamed. He spun just in time to see a massive figure rising from a pool behind the altar, humanoid but grotesquely transformed, with blue-black skin and elongated limbs. Its face was a nightmare of two sharp teeth and glowing eyes. Rookwood, Harry recognized the transformed Death Eater despite his monstrous appearance. Voldemort's turned him into some kind of hybrid. Water and death, Hermione realized. He's a test subject for the ritual's effects on humans. The creature that had once been Augustus Rookwood snarled, water streaming from his mouth instead of words. He lunged with unnatural speed, clawed hands outstretched. Stupefy. Harry and Hermione cast simultaneously. The spell struck Rookwood squarely in the chest, but he merely staggered back a step before continuing his charge. Physical spells clearly had limited effect on his transformed body. "The helm!" Harry shouted. "Focus on the helm. I'll hold him off." Hermione hesitated only a moment before turning to the altar while Harry faced the advancing monster. Drawing on everything Percy had taught him, Harry reached deep into his connection to the sea. Instead of fighting the corrupted water directly, he focused on its true nature, its memory of what it should be. The vial around his neck glowed brighter, resonating with his effort. "You belong to no one," Harry addressed the water itself, speaking words that felt ancient in his mouth. "Return to your true form." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like ice cracking in spring, the blue corruption flickered in the water surrounding Rookwood. The Death Eater shrieked, a sound more akin to water rushing down a drain than a human scream, as portions of his transformed body began to revert to normal seawater. Meanwhile, Hermione had reached the helm. "How do I destroy it?" she called frantically. "The divine water." Harry shouted back, still concentrating on holding Rookwood at bay. "Pour it directly on the helm." Hermione reached for the vial around Harry's neck, careful not to break his concentration. As she uncorked it, Rookwood lunged again, his partially dissolved form still surprisingly fast. "Protego." Harry cast, the shield charm buying precious seconds. Hermione appended the vial over the helm, the divine water flowing like liquid silver onto the corrupted symbol. Where they touched, bright light flared, sea green battling against sickly blue. Across the chamber, Nico had created a circle of black fire that kept the drowned spirits at bay, but he was clearly tiring, his face deathly pale with exertion. "Hurry," he called. The helm was resisting, the corruption fighting back against the pure divine essence. Harry realized they needed more power, a stronger connection to Poseidon's domain. In desperation, he cut his palm with a sharp edge of the altar and pressed his bleeding hand against the helm, adding his own demigod blood to the mixture. "By Poseidon's blood, break this corruption," he commanded. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The helm cracked down the middle, blue energy exploding outward in a shockwave that knocked them all off their feet. Rookwood's watery form collapsed completely, leaving only a normal human body unconscious on the stone floor. The drowned spirits wailed in unison, then began to fade, released from their binding. The cavern trembled violently, rocks falling from the ceiling. "This place is collapsing," Hermione shouted, helping Harry to his feet. "We need to leave." They ran to where Nico had fallen, exhausted from his battle with the spirits. Harry hoisted the son of Hades onto his back while Hermione led the way back toward the underwater tunnels. "Can you still breathe underwater?" Harry asked Hermione urgently as they reached the water's edge. She cast another bubblehead charm in response. "But Nico can't. He's barely conscious." Harry concentrated, summoning what remained of his strength. The corrupted water was rapidly returning to normal, responding once again to his divine heritage. He created a bubble of air around Nico's head, similar to the bubblehead charm but formed from his control over water. Stay close, he instructed Hermione. The tunnels might be unstable. They plunged back into the water, Harry guiding them through increasingly treacherous passages as the cavern system began collapsing behind them. Twice they had to detour around cave-ins, and once Hermione used a blasting charm to clear a blocked passage. Finally, they burst out into the open sea, the night sky visible above the turbulent surface. Harry pulled them toward shore, fighting exhaustion as he maintained Nico's air bubble. They collapsed onto the rocky beach, soaked and battered but alive. The storm clouds above were dissipating, and the sea was gradually calming as the corrupted energy dispersed. "We did it," Hermione gasped between deep breaths. Nico stirred weakly. "The death energy, it's receding. The focus point is destroyed." Harry checked his watch anxiously. "I wonder if Percy's team had similar success." As if in answer, the air before them shimmered, and Fawkes appeared in a burst of flame. The phoenix trilled urgently, extending his tail feathers. "Something's wrong," Harry realized. "They need help." Hermione looked at Nico with concern. "He can't travel again. He needs rest." "You stay with him," Harry decided. "I'll go." "Harry, there's no time to argue," he cut her off, already moving toward Fawkes. "Get Nico back to safety. Use his emergency port key if he's strong enough to activate it." Before Hermione could protest further, Harry grasped Fawkes's tail feathers. The world dissolved in cleansing fire, only to reform seconds later into a scene of chaos. He found himself on the edge of the famous White Cliffs of Dover, where a battle was raging. Percy, Ron, and Annabeth were fighting for their lives against a group of Death Eaters led by Lucius Malfoy, while Keto hovered above the fray in her chariot, directing the assault. In the center of the cliff edge stood the third focus point, a mockery of Zeus's lightning bolt, crackling with corrupted blue energy where it had been driven into the rock. "Harry!" Percy shouted, spotting him. "The focus point. We can't get close enough." Harry assessed the situation quickly. Annabeth was holding her own against two Death Eaters with a celestial bronze dagger, her movements blindingly fast. Ron had conjured a shield charm that was barely deflecting spells from Malfoy and another masked figure. Percy was simultaneously dueling a Death Eater and trying to counter Keto's water attacks from above, but he was clearly tiring. Drawing his wand, Harry sprinted toward the false lightning bolt. A Death Eater moved to intercept him, but Harry was done with subtlety. Combining his wizard magic with the remnants of his divine energy, he cast with every ounce of strength he had left. Expulso. The spell hit with such force that the Death Eater was blasted off the cliff entirely, screaming as he plummeted toward the distant surf. Percy seized the opportunity, disengaging from his opponent to join Harry. Together, they fought their way toward the focus point, moving with the synchronized efficiency of brothers who trained together. "You got the water?" Percy shouted over the din of battle. "Used it at the other site." Harry called back, deflecting a curse. "What about your seashell?" Percy patted his pocket. "Still got it." "Cover me." Harry positioned himself between Percy and the remaining Death Eaters, casting shield charms and counter curses in rapid succession. Above, Keto shrieked with rage, directing a massive wave up the cliff face toward them. "Hurry!" Harry urged as he felt the cliff trembling beneath their feet. Percy reached the false lightning bolt and pressed his seashell against it, speaking in ancient Greek. The shell glowed sea green, but the corruption fought back, blue lightning arcing painfully through Percy's body. "It's not enough." Percy gasped, his face contorted in pain but refusing to let go. "The corruption's too strong here." Harry fought his way to his brother's side, placing his hand over Percy's on the seashell. Together. Just as they had in the underwater battle, they synchronized their connection to the sea, Percy's natural power and Harry's wizard demigod hybrid abilities reinforcing each other. The seashell blazed brighter, the green light pushing back against the blue corruption. "Sons of the sea god," they recited together, words coming to them instinctively, "we reject this false power and restore true balance." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the false lightning bolt shattered with a sound like thunder, releasing a pulse of energy that knocked everyone to the ground. The cliff edge cracked dangerously, threatening to give way beneath them. "Everybody off the cliff!" Annabeth shouted, helping Ron to his feet. Keto screamed in fury, her chariot dissolving as the corrupted water supporting it returned to natural form. She plummeted briefly before transforming into water herself, flowing down the cliff face toward the sea. The Death Eaters, seeing their advantage lost, began to disapparate. Lucius Malfoy was the last to leave, his cold eyes meeting Harry's with pure hatred before he vanished with a crack. "Run!" Percy urged as the cliff continued to crumble. They sprinted away from the edge just as a massive section broke free, tumbling into the sea below. When they finally stopped, 100 yards from the new cliff edge, they turned to see that the false lightning bolt and a significant portion of the ritual circle had disappeared completely. "Did we do it?" Ron asked, bleeding from a cut on his forehead. "Is it over?" Annabeth closed her eyes, concentrating. "The divine disruption is fading. I think she was interrupted by a tremendous roar from the sea below. The water had begun to churn violently, forming a massive whirlpool directly beneath the collapsed cliff section. "That doesn't look like victory," Harry observed grimly. Percy's expression was grave. "It's a backlash. We've disrupted 2 focus points, but the third site in Cornwall must have been repaired already. The ritual triangle is trying to stabilize with just 2 points. Which means?" Ron pressed. "Which means instead of controlled binding of sea power, Voldemort's getting an uncontrolled surge," Annabeth explained. "Potentially even more dangerous in the short term." As if confirming her words, the whirlpool below expanded dramatically, waves rising unnaturally high around its edges. Dark storm clouds gathered with impossible speed overhead, and lightning began striking the water in regular, deliberate patterns. "He's trying to salvage the ritual," Harry realized. "Using the energy backlash to create something new." Percy nodded grimly. "And I bet he's down there personally this time, not trusting his servants after 2 failures. We need to stop him," Harry decided. "End this completely." Percy glanced at the others. "Ron's injured, and Annabeth's dagger won't help underwater. This is on us, brother." Harry knew he was right. "Fawkes can take them back to Hogwarts, then return for us when we're done." Annabeth grabbed Percy's arm. "This is suicide. You're both exhausted, and Voldemort's at the height of his power down there." "We don't have a choice," Percy said softly, kissing her quickly. "The sea's our domain. If anyone can stop this, it's us." Harry explained the plan to Fawkes, who trilled reluctantly but extended his tail feathers to Ron and Annabeth. "We'll signal when we need extraction," Harry promised. "Don't die, you idiots," was Annabeth's parting advice before Fawkes whisked them away in a burst of flame. Alone on the cliff, the brothers faced each other. "Ready for this?" Percy asked, his sea-green eyes serious. Harry nodded. "Born ready, apparently." Together, they turned and dove off the cliff edge, plunging toward the churning water below. They hit the water at terminal velocity, but instead of a crushing impact, the sea welcomed them, their divine heritage asserting itself even against the corrupted currents. They dove deeper, following the unnatural pull toward the center of the whirlpool. "There." Percy pointed to a dark shape suspended in the vortex's eye. As they drew closer, Harry felt his scar explode with pain. Voldemort floated in the whirlpool center, his pale form surrounded by a sphere of corrupted water. His eyes were closed in concentration, arms extended as he channeled the chaotic energy of the failing ritual. Around him hovered Keto and several other figures Harry didn't recognize, minor sea deities, he guessed, drawn to the unprecedented disruption in their domain. "He's trying to become a focal point himself," Percy realized. "Using his body as a conduit for the divine energy. Will that work?" Harry asked, horrified. "Not in any stable way. It'll burn him out eventually," but he could cause catastrophic damage first. They paused at the edge of the protective sphere, assessing their options. Direct attack, Harry suggested. Percy shook his head. That sphere looks like concentrated divine wizard hybrid energy. Our powers would just feed it. Harry thought frantically. What about the reverse of what we've been doing? Instead of purifying corrupted water, we corrupt his purified sphere. With what? Mortality, Harry said, the idea crystallizing. Voldemort fears death more than anything. His ritual is trying to elevate him beyond mortal limits. What if we remind the water of its role in the mortal cycle? Birth, life, death, water is part of all of them. Percy's eyes widened. That might work. Remind the water that it belongs to the natural cycle, not to immortal power games. He gripped Harry's shoulder. But we'd have to get inside that sphere to do it. I can get us in, Harry said confidently. My connection to Voldemort. The sphere is attuned to his magical signature, which is linked to me through my scar. Percy looked skeptical. You sure about this? Not even slightly, Harry admitted. But got any better ideas? Fresh out, Percy grinned tensely. Let's do this. They swam cautiously closer to the sphere. As Harry had predicted, when they approached a certain point, his scar flared with pain, and the sphere's energy recognized him, rippling slightly as if uncertain whether to reject or welcome him. Now, Harry whispered, grabbing Percy's wrist tightly. He pushed forward, focusing on the connection that had plagued him for years, the unwanted link to Voldemort that had brought so many nightmares. For once, he didn't fight it but leaned into it, using it as a doorway. The sphere's surface stretched like a membrane, then admitted them with a sensation like passing through electrified jelly. They were in. Voldemort's eyes snapped open immediately, crimson irises widening in shock. Potter. His voice carried perfectly through the water, infused with magical resonance. How dare you interfere? The dark wizard looked different, his pale skin now marbled with blue patterns like ritual markings, his movements fluid and unnatural. Divine energy had already begun transforming him. It's over, Tom, Harry said calmly, using Voldemort's hated birth name. Your ritual failed. Failed? Voldemort laughed, the sound distorted and bubbling. I have adapted, Potter. The triangle was merely the beginning. Now I channel the power directly, becoming what your father fears most, a mortal ascended to divine status. Keto and the other sea deities remained outside the sphere, watching with expressions ranging from eagerness to concern. They were betting on Voldemort, Harry realized, but hedging in case he failed. You don't understand what you're meddling with, Percy said, addressing Voldemort directly. Divine power isn't just magic with the volume turned up. It's connected to the fundamental forces of reality. I understand more than you think, demigod, Voldemort snarled. Your father and his pantheon hoarded power for millennia, allowing only scraps to fall to mortals. No longer. I will take what should have been ours from the beginning. He raised his hands, and the water within the sphere began to churn violently. Harry and Percy found themselves pushed apart by opposing currents, struggling to maintain their positions. Now, brother! Percy shouted. Together, they reached out, not with magic or divine power, but with understanding. They connected to the water's most fundamental nature, its place in the mortal cycle of the world. Water gives life, Harry called, fighting against the pressure pushing him back. Water takes life, Percy continued, extending his hand toward his brother. Water remembers all, they said together, their fingers connecting despite Voldemort's attempts to separate them. The Dark Lord's face contorted with rage. Silence. I am the master here. But something was changing in the water around them. The blue corruption began to fade in places, natural currents reasserting themselves against Voldemort's control. Water belongs to no one, Harry continued, drawing strength from his connection to Percy. Not gods, not wizards, not you. It is part of the eternal cycle, Percy added. Birth, life, death, rebirth. Voldemort screamed in fury and pain as the water inside his protective sphere began to revert to its natural state. The ritual markings on his skin flared brightly, then began to crack like dried mud, leaking golden ichor mixed with human blood. "What are you doing to me?" he shrieked. "Nothing," Harry replied calmly. "That's the point. We're letting the water be what it truly is, part of the mortal world, not a tool for your immortality." The sphere was now pulsing erratically, sections returning to normal seawater while others clung to the corrupted state. Voldemort's body began to convulse as the conflicting energies tore through him, too much for his magically constructed form to contain. Outside, Keto and the other deities were retreating, sensing the imminent collapse of Voldemort's power grab. The whirlpool above was losing cohesion, the unnatural storm beginning to disperse. "It's working," Percy encouraged. "Keep going." They continued their invocation, reminding the water of its true nature and place in the world's balance. As they did, Harry felt something unexpected, a presence joining their effort, vast and ancient, touching their minds briefly with approval. Poseidon, Harry realized. Their father was adding his influence, not directly interfering but strengthening their natural connection to his domain. Voldemort must have sensed it too. "No," he howled, abandoning his ritual to attack them directly. Avada Kedavra. The killing curse shot toward Harry, but underwater, slowed by the conflicting currents, it moved at a fraction of its normal speed. Harry easily pushed himself aside, the green light passing harmlessly by. "You can't win, Tom," Harry said, almost pitying the desperate figure before him. "You're fighting the nature of reality itself." With a final, terrible scream of rage, Voldemort's control shattered completely. The protective sphere collapsed, natural seawater rushing in to reclaim its place. The ritual markings on Voldemort's skin burst open, divine energy escaping his body like steam from a ruptured boiler. For a moment, the Dark Lord hung suspended in the water, his face a mask of pain and fury. Then, with a crack like breaking ice, he disapparated, fleeing before the complete collapse could destroy him. The backlash was immediate and violent. With Voldemort's departure, all the corrupted energy he'd been channeling released at once, creating an underwater shockwave that sent Harry and Percy tumbling through the water like leaves in a hurricane. Harry felt Percy grab his arm as they were tossed about, keeping them together despite the chaos. The world was a blur of bubbles and current, up and down losing all meaning as the sea reclaimed its natural state with a vengeance. When the tumult finally subsided, they found themselves floating near the surface, the night sky visible above through clearing storm clouds. The sea had calmed, gentle waves replacing the monstrous whirlpool. "We did it," Harry gasped, his entire body aching with exhaustion. Percy looked equally drained but managed a weak smile. "Not bad for your first month as a demigod." They floated on their backs, staring up at the stars as their strength slowly returned. The water felt clean again, its natural rhythms restored. Below, Harry sensed sea creatures returning to the area, no longer repelled by the corruption. Voldemort escaped, Harry noted after a while. "Yeah, but seriously messed up," Percy replied. "Trying to channel divine energy like that? He'll be licking his wounds for a long time." "You think he'll try again?" Percy considered this. "Maybe, but differently. He got a painful lesson about the limits of what a mortal body can handle, even a magically constructed one." They lapsed into comfortable silence, letting the gentle rocking of the waves soothe their battered bodies. Finally, Harry sighed and sat up, treading water. "We should get back. They'll be worried." Percy nodded. "Probably planning our funerals already." Harry closed his eyes, concentrating on creating a signal. With effort, he raised a column of water 30 feet into the air, holding it steady despite his exhaustion. The water glowed faintly green, not corrupted blue, but the natural color of their father's power. Minutes later, Fawkes appeared in a burst of flame, hovering just above the water with his tail feathers extended. The brothers grasped them gratefully, and the phoenix carried them away from the battlefield that had nearly become their grave. The hospital wing was quiet except for Madame Pomfrey's occasional muttering as she fussed over her patients. Harry and Percy occupied adjacent beds, both having collapsed from exhaustion immediately upon their return to Hogwarts. Harry woke first, blinking groggily at the familiar white ceiling. His body felt like he'd been trampled by a herd of hippogriffs, but his mind was clearer than it had been in days. "Welcome back to the land of the living," said a familiar voice. Harry turned his head to see Dumbledore seated beside his bed, looking both relieved and grave. "How long?" Harry croaked, his throat dry. "Nearly 2 days," Dumbledore replied, offering a glass of water. "You and Mr. Jackson expended tremendous magical and divine energy. Your bodies needed time to recover." Harry sipped gratefully, memories flooding back. "The ritual? Voldemort? The ritual has been completely disbanded. The corrupted areas are returning to normal, and the Ministry reports that coastal disturbances have ceased entirely." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly. "Of course, they're attributing it to their own excellent magical management, rather than the efforts of 2 remarkable young men." "And Voldemort?" Dumbledore's expression sobered. "No sign of him. Professor Snape reports that the Dark Lord has secluded himself, refusing all visitors. Apparently, he was significantly damaged by his attempt to channel divine power. But he'll be back," Harry stated with certainty. "Yes, I believe he will. Though perhaps with a newfound caution regarding certain types of magic." Dumbledore studied Harry over his half-moon spectacles. "You've changed, Harry." Harry considered this. "I feel more complete somehow. Like I finally understand parts of myself that never made sense before." "The integration of your wizard and demigod heritages," Dumbledore nodded. "A unique synthesis that proved quite fortunate for all of us." A groan from the next bed announced Percy's awakening. He sat up slowly, wincing. "Did someone get the license plate of the sea monster that ran me over?" Dumbledore chuckled. "I shall leave you brothers to recover together. You have other visitors waiting anxiously, but Madame Pomfrey has been quite fierce in restricting access." As if summoned by her name, the matron bustled over. "Awake at last. Now drink these, both of you." She handed them each several potions in labeled vials. Strengthening solution, magical regeneration draft, and a special seawater tincture that Miss Chase insisted would help. Percy sniffed the last vial suspiciously. "Definitely Annabeth's work. Smells like concentrated kelp." They dutifully drank their medicines, and Madame Pomfrey retreated after warning them to remain in bed. Once alone, the brothers exchanged weary grins. "So," Percy said casually, "save the world often?" Harry laughed, then winced as his sore ribs protested. "More often than I'd like." "You? Once or twice a summer. Keeps things interesting." Percy sobered. "Seriously though, what you did down there, that was impressive. Most demigods take years to develop that kind of connection to their divine domain." "I had a good teacher," Harry replied sincerely. Percy waved this off, embarrassed by the genuine compliment. "Anyway, according to Annabeth, we did more than just stop Voldemort's ritual. We may have permanently reduced his ability to access divine power." "How so?" "Something about the backlash creating a kind of divine allergic reaction. Apparently, his magical core now instinctively rejects divine energy as a self-protective measure. His body learned the hard way that it can't handle that kind of power." Harry considered this. "So we've closed off one avenue he might have used to become more powerful." "Exactly. Not bad for a couple of weeks' work." Before Harry could respond, the hospital wing doors burst open, and Ron, Hermione, and Annabeth rushed in, followed more sedately by Nico, who still looked pale but significantly recovered. "Harry." Hermione reached him first, hovering uncertainly as if afraid to hug him. "We were so worried." "Mate, you look terrible," Ron contributed helpfully. Annabeth had no such reservations about physical contact, throwing herself at Percy with enough force to make his bed creak. "You complete seaweed brain. What were you thinking, confronting a dark wizard and a sea goddess while exhausted?" "That I'm awesome," Percy suggested, earning a punch to his arm. "How bad is it out there?" Harry asked, nodding toward the windows. "With Umbridge, I mean." Ron grimaced. "She's on the warpath. Knows you were involved in something but can't prove it. Especially since Dumbledore convinced the Ministry you were in quarantine for potential divine energy contamination since the moment you missed detention." "Which is technically true," Hermione added. "Just not for the reasons she thinks." Harry groaned. "She'll make my life hell when I get out of here." "Actually," Nico spoke up, "that might not be a problem much longer." They all looked at him questioningly. "The Ministry's in chaos after the coastal disturbances," he explained. "Too many witnesses saw things that can't be explained away as normal magical accidents. The International Confederation of Wizards is demanding answers, and several high-ranking Ministry officials have already resigned." "Including Umbridge?" Harry asked hopefully. "Not yet," Hermione said. "But her position has been significantly weakened. The educational decrees are being reviewed, and there's talk of removing her from Hogwarts entirely." A comfortable conversation flowed around them, their friends filling in what they'd missed during their 2-day unconsciousness. Fred and George had parlayed their diversionary chaos into a thriving underground business selling anti-Umbridge products. The Daily Prophet had reversed course completely, now praising Harry as the chosen one, without mentioning their previous smear campaign. And most surprisingly, a delegation from Camp Half-Blood was expected to arrive the following week to establish formal diplomatic relations with the wizarding world. Eventually, Madame Pomfrey shooed everyone out, insisting her patients needed rest. As the hospital wing settled into evening quiet, Harry found himself oddly content despite his physical discomfort. "Percy?" he asked into the dimness. "Yeah. What happens now?" "With us, I mean. You'll be going back to America eventually." Percy was silent for a moment. "Yeah, I will. The war with Kronos is still brewing, and camp needs me." He shifted to face Harry. "But that doesn't change anything important." "What do you mean?" "Family is family, no matter how far apart we are. Believe me, the gods wrote the book on long-distance relationships." Percy's voice was uncharacteristically serious. "You're my brother, Harry. That doesn't end when I go back to New York." Harry felt a lump form in his throat. After a lifetime of the Dursleys, the concept of permanent, unconditional family was still sometimes hard to grasp. "Besides," Percy continued, lightening the mood, "I'm pretty sure Annabeth's already planning summer exchange programs between Camp Half-Blood and Hogwarts. Something about unprecedented cross-cultural magical cooperation opportunities." Harry laughed. "She and Hermione will revolutionize both our worlds within a year. And probably take over in the process," Percy agreed. Scary thought. They fell quiet again, comfortable in the growing brotherhood between them. Just as Harry was drifting toward sleep, Percy spoke again. "You know what this means, right?" "What?" "Next time there's a world-ending prophecy, we each only have to handle half." The last day of term arrived with surprising normalcy, considering the events of the past month. Umbridge had indeed been recalled to London for extended consultations, effectively ending her reign at Hogwarts. Exams proceeded without the dementors that typically caused Harry such anxiety. And perhaps most significantly, the Daily Prophet had finally acknowledged Voldemort's return, though with no mention of his attempted divine power grab. Harry stood by the Black Lake, watching the giant squid lazily wave its tentacles in the warm June sunlight. The water was completely restored now, all traces of corruption gone as if they'd never existed. "Saying goodbye?" Percy asked, joining him at the shore. Harry nodded. "In a way. To this version of Hogwarts, I guess. Everything's going to be different now." Change isn't always bad, Percy pointed out. Sometimes it's exactly what we need. The past few weeks had certainly brought change. After their recovery, Percy had continued training Harry in his demigod abilities, while Harry had introduced Percy to the finer points of wizardry. They discovered interesting hybrid applications. Percy could enhance certain spells by channeling them through water, while Harry had learned to combine wand movements with hydrokinesis for precision water control. The diplomatic delegation from Camp Half-Blood had arrived as promised, creating quite a stir at Hogwarts. Chiron himself had come, in wheelchair form, to avoid frightening the first years, along with Annabeth and several senior counselors. They'd established preliminary agreements for information sharing and mutual defense, with more formal treaties to be drafted over the summer. "When do you leave?" Harry asked. "Tomorrow," Percy replied. "Chiron needs all hands back at camp. Our intelligence suggests Kronos is planning something big for August." Harry nodded, trying not to show his disappointment. Despite knowing this moment was coming, he'd grown accustomed to having his brother around. "But hey," Percy brightened, "you're still coming to Camp Half-Blood in July, right? 2 weeks of intensive training, American style." "Wouldn't miss it," Harry promised. The Dursleys had been surprisingly amenable to the arrangement after a visit from Chiron in his full centaur glory. Uncle Vernon had practically signed the permission form with his own blood. They skipped stones across the lake's surface, competing to see who could make them go farther. Percy won handily, though Harry suspected divine cheating. "You know," Percy said casually, "our dad visited me last night." Harry's hand froze mid-throw. "Poseidon? Here at Hogwarts?" Percy nodded. "Just briefly. Gods can't stay long in mortal realms, especially outside their traditional territories. But he wanted me to give you a message." "What did he say?" Harry asked, trying to sound nonchalant despite his racing heart. "He said he's proud of you. Of both of us. What we did against Voldemort, stopping the ritual without direct divine intervention, it impressed him." Percy smiled slightly. "That's rare, by the way. Gods aren't easily impressed." Harry absorbed this, surprised by how much the simple approval affected him. "Did he say anything else?" "Yeah. He said your mother was extraordinary, one of the most remarkable mortals he'd ever met. And that James Potter was a man of rare honor, who loved you as his own from the moment he knew of your existence." Percy looked at Harry directly. "He wanted you to know you're fortunate to have had 2 fathers who cared for you, even if you only got to know one of them." Tears pricked at Harry's eyes, and he blinked them back quickly. "Thanks for telling me." Percy clapped him on the shoulder. "There's more. He left something for you." From his pocket, Percy withdrew a simple leather cord strung with a single charm, a small trident carved from what looked like pearl but glowed with faint sea-green light. "It's connected to the sea," Percy explained as Harry took it wonderingly. "If you're ever in real trouble, break the charm. It'll send a distress signal that both Dad and I will feel, no matter where we are." Harry slipped it over his head, feeling a warm pulse of recognition as the charm settled against his chest. "I don't know what to say." "Thanks, awesome big brother works," Percy suggested with a grin. Harry shoved him playfully. "You're only older in this timeline. In the next one, I'll be the wise, experienced brother. Dream on, wizard boy." They continued bantering as they walked back toward the castle for the end-of-term feast, the summer sun warm on their shoulders and the future, however uncertain, somehow less daunting than before. Harry had faced Voldemort many times, survived the Triwizard Tournament, and endured years of the Dursleys' neglect. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't just the boy who lived or the chosen one. He was a son, a brother, a wizard, a demigod, all parts of a whole that finally made sense. Whatever challenges came next, and he had no illusions that both their worlds would soon face terrible tests, he would meet them with a fuller understanding of who he was and where he belonged. And he wouldn't face them alone. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.